हो गया होता था। Good morning, Dr. Meera. Your microphone is off. Good morning, ma'am. We are not able to hear you. Good morning, Dr. Namrata. Your microphone is off. You can on it.
Yes, good morning, Astha.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Thank you
Am
for
I
joining
audible
us.
properly?
Yeah, it's audible.
Okay.
क्या बोलूं?
No, speak. I think they might be hear you. No.
चलो आप कुछ और चाहिए।
बोलो तो।
तो मेरा है फोन शायद नहीं। अच्छा, और जरा ये देखो आवाज। I tried that and she said she couldn't hear me. Nobody is speaking as yet. That's it. अच्छा ठीक है। हैं?
Gajendra sir, your audio is off.
Can you hear me, Asta?
Yes, ma'am, I can hear you loud and clear.
Oh, okay, all right, okay.
We'll just take through everybody's audio before we begin.
Sure. Mhm.
सर आपको ऑडियो का साइन नहीं आ रहा गजेंद्र सर. You can rejoin, I guess. Good morning, Dr. Amit. Thank you for joining.
कैसे हो आप?
बढ़िया बढ़िया, all good.
Hi अमित,
हाय मैम, कैसे हो आप?
मैं ठीक हूँ, आप कैसे हो?
मैं बढ़िया हूँ चंगा, आपका आशीर्वाद है साथ में, एकदम मस्त हूँ।
वेरी गुड, वेरी गुड।
आप ठीक हो?
हाँ हाँ,
गुड। और दीदी लोग सब ठीक हैं?
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल।
ग्रेट। 10 बजे शुरू करें ना? मैं
हाँ जी, exact time will be beginning at 10.
ओके। I hope I'm not intruding into the session.
Good morning, Gajendra sir.
Good morning, Dr. Asa.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
गुड मॉर्निंग सर।
Good morning, Ji. Good morning.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, Dr. Amit.
गुड मॉर्निंग।
गुड मॉर्निंग डॉक्टर राणा।
जी डॉक्टर साहब प्रणाम, गुड मॉर्निंग।
मेरी तो गुड इवनिंग है वैसे।
हाँ गुड इवनिंग।
गुड मॉर्निंग सर।
Good morning, everybody. We'll be beginning this session. I believe everybody's mics are working. Is the problem sorted, Mr. Gajendra? Thank you. Thank you so much. So we are here to observe the International Human Rights Day, 10th of December. We'll be discussing human rights. Please, the next slide. Jitendra, can we have the next slide, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us and taking time for this session. We have two sessions today. The first session would be about the vulnerable rights of women and children, and second session would be the tobacco use and the environmental issues and the right violation caused by them.
Sorry, it's taking a bit long. Just bear
It's
with
okay.
me.
The opening address will be delivered by Dr. Rana. Then we have the session. The session will be chaired by Dr. Meera, and we have two speakers for this session. For the women health, we have Dr. Namrata Lambia with us. And for the session on child abuse, we have Mr. Gajendra. So human rights are basically moral principles or norm. They are certain standards of human behavior. They are protected as natural and legal rights, and every human right is protected in our municipal or the international law. They are something that are very fundamental and are unalienable. They are simply inherited, and we have them because we are a human being. They are all the human rights. Everybody has them, despite of their differences of age, ethnic origin, location, language, religion, ethnicity, or any other status. Next slide, please. Human rights, they are privileges we get by virtue of being a human being. So everybody, every human is entitled to human rights. Next slide, please. Now the question arises, why do we need human rights? Human rights are necessary because they help us fulfill our basic needs. Human rights protect the vulnerable sections of the society from being abused. Human rights allow people to stand up for the societal corruption. Human rights encourage freedom of speech and expression. Human rights give people the freedom to practice their religion. Next slide, please. Human rights encourage equal work opportunities. Human rights also give access to education. Human rights allow people to love who they choose. Human rights protect the environment. And also, human rights provide a universal standard that holds government accountable. Next slide, please. So the present day is celebrated because on this day, Universal Declaration of Human Rights took place. Universal Declaration of Human Rights is basically an international document that was adopted by the United Nations General Assembly. The document gives the rights and freedom that are entitled to human beings. It was accepted on this day, and thereafter, this day has been observed an International Declaration of Human Rights. Next slide, please. Now we'll be discussing the human rights of women and of children. Before we begin this session, I would request Dr. Rana, who's the Deputy Director with the International Union, to give the opening remarks for this session. Over to you, Dr. Rana.
Thanks, Dr. Astha. Thanks to Upinder also for asking me to speak at this webinar on human rights. So in fact, last week when Dr. Astha asked me, I was a little bit amused that what I know about human rights. So in fact, it is just to initiate the discussion as some opening remarks, which I am aware that it is important. And as we were planning 3 webinars in this series, one was also on environmental aspect and human rights. So you see, I will focus on mainly the healthy environment. Thanks for giving me this time again. You see the right to healthy environment as one of those human rights. It was never a priority. It was never a priority. Today, this right is an emerging concept already, and is being hotly debated also in human rights arena. A healthy environment is an essential aspect of right to life, not only for human beings, and we are also talking about healthy environment for animals also. Therefore, violation of these rights to healthy environment is potentially a violation of basic right to life. So what we observe, and what is happening now for the last maybe more than 50 years, environmental deterioration could eventually endanger life of present and future generation, and we are already seeing it. Therefore, it's very clear that right to life has been used and is being used globally as well as in our country in a diversified manner. You are aware that at an international scenario, it was 1972 Human Environment Conference, which was held in Stockholm in 1972. Very popularly, we call it as Magna Carta of Human Environment. And it was then, so it is almost, you can say, it is almost going to be 50 years when it was noted that natural resources of Earth, including air, water, land, flora, and fauna, and especially the representative sample of natural ecosystem, must be safeguarded. So it's not something new which we are perhaps we are not implementing all those things. Similarly, report on World Commission on Environment and Development, they also suggested various legal principles of for environment protection. There are many aspects, as you are all aware, which leads to environment degradation and environmental pollution. So that was again a very important summit. Again, Earth Summit in 1991, 1992. They also declared that human rights are entitled to human beings are entitled for a healthy and productive environment and productive life, which is in harmony with nature. And what has happened in our country, in India? We are all aware of Article 21 of Indian Constitution that states that no person shall be deprived of his life or personal liberty except according to the procedure which has been laid down or established by the law. So it is by this method that Supreme Court of India interpreted the right to life and personal liberty and included right to clean environment. So this is very important. So this was really a landmark part of this work. And in subsequently, you are aware that we had many such laws which were passed by Indian Parliament. You are aware of Wildlife Protection Act 1972, Water Act 1974, Forest Act 1989, Air Act 1981, and Environment Protection Act 1986. So many such laws, rules, and regulations. They were notified, and they were in legislations were enacted to see that we are able to protect environment with ultimate aim for right to clean environment. Now, an area where I am working, I won't be saying too much about other areas. Like we are also talking in this webinar about women and child rights. So currently where we are working, and many of you are also aware, that is tobacco control. It is again one area, tobacco use, perhaps which leads to lot of environmental degradation at all its, I think, all its steps. Tobacco growing, production, marketing, consumption are really devastating our environment. Tobacco cultivation causes deforestation and overutilization of many harmful chemicals. Lot of packaging and labeling which is required for tobacco products. It is very resource intensive in terms of paper, plastic, and chemicals that manufacturers are using for packaging. Then lastly, the thing which is again is being debated for the last now few months again, it is the waste, tobacco product waste, whether it is packaging waste, whether it is cigarette and BD litter. So it's really something which is really harming our environment. I won't be discussing in detail. We are going to discuss in detail the main environmental pollution because of tobacco. So at this stage, while this was all happening, one important landmark that you are all aware about second-hand smoke exposure. The second-hand caused by smoking, tobacco smoking. And you are all aware of the Murli S. Deora versus Union of India case, and where Supreme Court of India banned smoking in public places, that non-smokers cannot be compelled to be helpless victims of air pollution. So this was really something which was very crucial for our country and laid the foundation for implementation of India's legislation ban on smoking at public places. So what we see that tobacco use is a major cause of environmental degradation, leading to deprivation of basic human rights to the people. So in view of this and the other areas which we are going to discuss in this webinar, I think it's highly appreciable, and I convey my best wishes to this new area, and I hope that the recommendation from this workshop, this webinar, we will all be able to see those recommendations and share with the policymakers and administrators who are responsible to ensure all those rights for people of our country. So thank you once again, Dr. Astha, Upinder ji. Welcome to all the chairs and speakers. Thank you very much. Best wishes. Over
Thank
to
you, Dr. Rana.
Dr. Astha.
Thank you for sharing your views. It has been rightly said, right to environment is one such basic human right without which other rights have no existence. Our very existence depends upon the implementation of the right to a safe, clean, and healthy environment. We'll be discussing the human rights of the vulnerable population. Firstly, the women. Women face double discrimination, firstly because of being of a specific caste, class, or ethnic community, and secondly because of their gender. Women have a low status as compared to men in society. They have little say in the resources. About 500,000 women still undergo health-related issues during pregnancy. 18 million women die due to preventable causes, basically NCDs, every year. Next slide, please. Coming to the second group, the vulnerable group, that is the children. Children deserve to be valued, nurtured, and their rights need to be protected. Despite of this, 1 in every 7 children faces child abuse. What is more ironical is the fact that 90% of the cases, the child abuser is somebody who's a close family member or somebody who's closely associated with the child. Next slide, please. Thank you. From here, we begin our first session. Next slide, please. The session chair will be Dr. Meera B. Yagi. She's a behavior scientist and a communication expert. She has held prestigious positions in the International Development Research Center, Canada, and the CARE International. She is the recipient of the WHO Gold Medal on Tobacco Control and the Luther Terry Award. She holds a PhD in psychology from Chicago University of Loyola, USA. Our first speaker for the day will be Dr. Namrata Lohar. She is an assistant professor in the Department of Law in Maharaja Sayajirao Rao University of Baroda, Gujarat. She holds a PhD in law and has extensively worked on law related to right to health. She has 26 papers in national and international journals, 6 chapters in edited books, and has co-authored 2 books. She has keen interest in IPR, intellectual property rights, women and child laws, and Hindu laws. She has delivered 50 expert lectures at national and international platforms. We will be hearing firstly from the speaker, Dr. Namrata Lohar. Over to you. Ma'am, you can on your microphone.
Yes, thank you, Astha.
Jitendra, can we have the next slide, please? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Respected Chair, Dr. Meera Aghi, other respected speakers of the session, dignitaries present, participants and attendees. In fact, I'm very happy to know that these organizations are coming together to discuss and deliberate on women's right to health, which we feel is mostly ignored or undermined at various fronts in various places. So we will begin with the discussions on right to health. Before we begin with what is women's right to health, it is very important for us to understand that what health means. We find most of the times that people do consider health in the most narrowest sense. So if I say I am without any disease, if I'm all well, I'm healthy, but it is not so. But because health depends on a number of determinants, it depends on number of factors, and we find each factors are interlinked with each other. And so the World Health Organization has defined health as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not just merely absence of disease or infirmity. Friends, we find that this particular definition given by World Health Organization is wide enough to include various aspects which are interlinked with health. When I say a person is healthy, it means the person is spiritually healthy, he is socially healthy, he is physically healthy, intellectually and emotionally healthy. We find health violations are often happening, especially to women on all the fronts, and we should be very happy to know that the international community has addressed the issues relating to health of women in various documents as well as conventions. And so can you go to the next slide, please? Yes. So when we talk about the women's health rights, specifying that health is a human right itself was a very landmark, I think, occasion wherein we see that, yes, if you want to enjoy your human rights, you should be healthy. And so as the earlier speakers were saying that there are so many human rights that we have, especially specified, identified, recognized under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I feel that none of these rights would be available or accessible to human beings unless and until the right to health is available. In fact, every human right is interlinked with each other. And so amongst these all human rights that we all enjoy, I feel that women's human rights and women's right to health should have a very special place amongst the human rights framework and should be recognized and respected in the same manner in the society by people belonging to all the genders. If we talk about the attempts that have taken place at the United Nations, we find that since 1946, soon after the establishment of United Nations, the United Nations community had started beginning with deliberating and discussing on women's right to health in a narrow sense, but yes, of course, on women's rights on a broader sense. And so in 1946, as you all can see on the slide, we had the commission which was established to understand the status of women so that more specific actions can be taken. The very important document that we all have, and that is the reason for which we are all together today, is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, a very comprehensive framework identifying, respecting, recognizing, and specifying human rights of individuals have been specified, which also provides that, yes, right to health is a human right. Coming ahead, we find that women's human rights, especially specific human rights violations that women have faced over a period of time, were to be addressed. And so the General Assembly had adopted a declaration on elimination of discrimination against women in 1967, which was followed by the convention in 1979. I feel this convention has been a landmark document because of this convention, we find many human rights of women have been established at the global level in various countries at national fronts. And we find that this convention has laid down a minimum standard which has to be adhered to while we accept and while we recognize human rights of women. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yes, coming to specific provisions that we have for women, rather right to health. When we see Universal Declaration of Human Rights, right to health has been recognized as a human right under Article 25. When we see Article 25 and we try to interpret Article 25, again we find that this Article 25, which recognizes right to health, has various aspects involved into it. It just does not talk about right to be right to be free from disease. In fact, it talks much more. It goes beyond beyond it. And so when we read into Article 25, we find that it includes everything. It includes everything. And so time and again, we find that various national legislations as well as courts have interpreted right to health in the widest possible manner, so as to include various aspects like food, clothing, medical care, social services, right to have a healthy environment, right to have safe working conditions, right to found a family, so on and so forth. So Universal Declaration of Human Rights 1948 in its Article 25 specifically says that right to health encompasses within itself not just right to be healthy physically, but yes, also to include right to security, especially in the event of unemployment, sickness, disability, widowhood, old age, etc. A very specific emphasis has been given in Universal Declaration of Human Rights to motherhood and childhood. As we all know that women's rights are very special, because at times we find that women requires something more because of the responsibilities that women has been carrying out, and also because of the reproductive changes that a woman undergoes during her lifetime. And so because of this, we find even the Universal Declaration of Human Rights has put a very special mention of motherhood. We find that when we talk about women's right to health, it is often been neglected or violated, especially during the reproductive ages of women. And so this we find has a very special mention in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Next slide, please. Yes, coming to this very specific convention, as I said, a very important document which has laid down certain standards to be achieved in providing and promoting human rights of women. I will be focusing only on right to health of women, which has been specified in Article 12 of CEDAW. We call it as CEDAW in short, which says that discrimination in all the fronts, especially in the field of right to health, has to be eliminated. Women should have access to health services, which should be on an equal basis, especially with respect to family planning. In the Indian context, when we see, we find that women's right to health, especially in respect of family planning, spacing of children, reproductive choices, is often been ignored and violated. And hence, that is the reason we find CEDAW also specifies that women should be given specific services, especially in times of pregnancy, prenatal and postnatal care, and adequate nutrition has to be adhered to, or it should be provided during pregnancy and lactation periods. So these specific rights with respect to women's rights have been specified in CEDAW. Coming forward to the next slide, please. We find next slide. Yes, we find that in the Indian context, women living in rural areas have been playing a very important roles in all the fronts, as I was saying, not only on the family side, but also on the economic side. Like we find a lot of women working on agricultural places, a lot of women working in informal places of employment, unorganized places of employment. And so while they conduct their day-to-day activities, while they are conducting their routine activities, we find women living in rural areas, they face very specific problems. Their roles are very significant, not only in their families and social fronts, but also in the economy. And so Article 14 of CEDAW gives a specific mention about the rights of women living in rural areas, considering the role played by women in rural areas, and clause B of Article 14 in its very specific terms addresses adequate healthcare services, which includes information, counseling, and services in family planning. When we talk about right to health of women, we find that having adequate information with respect to health services, adequate education on how to promote your health is also very important, which we find that government and NGOs together can play a very important role in promoting and protecting these specific rights which fall within the umbrella of right to health. So we find that these are specific, keeping into consideration the time constraints of this session. I'm not discussing into too much of detail about these all international documents talking about women's rights, but these are the major highlights as we all can see from these two important documents. Next slide, please. So yes, all in all, when we talk about women's right to health, we then come across 4 different terms which can help, which can recognize women's right to health. And so when we see these 4 words, respecting right to health, very important. Why? Because we find that women's right to health is often not respected. Forget about while women is working in her workplace, or forget about while women is in the society, but in the family itself, we have seen that a mother, when she is ill, or wife, when she is ill, she has right to health. No, this has to be respected. Ignorance, not of only of herself, women herself, but ignorance from the family side is also something that has been witnessed, especially in the Indian context. And so respecting that women has rights, especially women's right, is very important. Protecting women's rights, fulfilling the obligations of international documents and international conventions, and then promoting. So not just protecting, but then promoting also. So when I say that we should promote human rights, it includes providing specific information, it includes specific counseling, it includes informed consent, and it includes a lot of sensitization and we can say education, awareness that has to be spread in the community, especially amongst women and amongst family members. So when we club these all international documents and conventions, no, these all rights, they revolve around these 4 terms, which includes respect, fulfill, protect, and promote. So this is an overview about women's human rights at the international framework. We move on to what kind of specific framework we have at the national level. And so I request you to go to the next slide, please. Yes, at the national level, I have divided the women's right to health within two parts. It's constitutional framework and other legislations that we have in India promoting human rights of women, especially the health rights. Yes, the next slide, please. Talking about the constitutional provisions, we find that the Constitution of India, especially Part 3 and Part 4 of the Constitution of India, have laid down a very comprehensive setup through which all of us can enjoy human rights, starting with the preamble, which lays down the goals and which specifies, which identifies that all these human rights, all these freedoms, they're available on an equal basis. And this makes us to understand that when we talk about fundamental rights, when we talk about certain principles which have to be adhered by the states, it should be made available on an equal basis. And so that is what we find Article 14, which talks about right to equality, has to be adhered. Equal protection of law has to be addressed by state as well as by executive actions. Very importantly, considering the vulnerable position and the status of women that has been enjoyed over centuries in India, Article 15, Clause 3 provides for a special provision for women and children. And that is why I feel that this entire session revolves around Article 15, Clause 3, because we'll be discussing about women as well as children in this session. And it says any action, any law, any positive measures which are made for women and children would not be discriminatory in nature. And so we find that the entire framework that we have protecting and promoting rights of women and children emanates from Article 15, Clause 3. Further, Article 21, as we all know, has been interpreted by the judiciary through its creativity, through its activism. And we have seen time and again various human rights have been made to including right to health, including right to food, including right to hygienic conditions, right to healthy and wholesome environment, and many more. Friends, these are all connected with right to health, and I thought I should be mentioning these all specific human rights, fundamental rights specified by the Supreme Court of India. Clause E of Article 39 contained in Part 4 of the Constitution of India provides for promoting health and strength of women and see to it that they are not being abused, especially the health rights. Article 42 we find is a very important article because it provides for just and human conditions of work and for maternity leave. We find that this is the most crucial period of life in any woman's life when she goes through the maternity period, wherein her health is something that is most important to be protected and addressed to. We have the Maternity Benefit Act, which provides for maternity leave, which ensures that women will not be demoted or her progress in career will not be affected just because she has gone through the maternity period. So that is Article 42. And we have the most important Article 47, which provides for raising of the level of nutrition and standard of living and improving public health. So overall, when we see these constitutional provisions, we understand that any actions which are taken by our country, by our government, by the executive actions, they all revolve around these all provisions which protect and promote right to health, especially women's right to health. Next slide, please. Yes, when we talk about women-specific health-related legislations, I have just included health-related legislations which are specifically focused for women. Of course, when we talk about the right to health, there have been other legislations too, like rights of persons with disabilities. We have a legislation on protecting mental health. We have a legislation on various other aspects for health, promoting and protecting health. But I have included in my slide only legislations which protect women's right to health. And as I was talking about maternity benefit, which has its source from Article 42 of the Constitution of India, we have the Maternity Benefit Act right from 1961, which has been recently amended in order to increase the period of maternity leave for women in India. It's a very important legislation which provides for certain maternity benefits, certain leave, and certain other benefits which women should receive as a matter of right. It's not that the employer is giving out of his own choice. It's a right of a woman which has to be established. We find that many a times when a woman has gone on a maternity in real sense, in practical sense, the employers and other colleagues believe that this is something that the employment is obliging. It is not so. It is the right of the women that she should be enjoying maternity benefits. Secondly, we find Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act 1971 has been there, which also provides that if a pregnancy has been there which affects the physical or mental health of a woman, such kind of pregnancy can be terminated legally. This very specific legislation was important because the Indian Penal Code earlier under section 312 did not permit abortion of a woman, abortion of pregnancy, even with the women's choice, even with the women's consent. So in order to control the population and also in order to permit legally certain termination of pregnancies, we have this Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act. Very specifically, it says that if it is an unwanted pregnancy, it is affecting the women's mental health, and so it can be terminated legally under this 1971 legislation. The next legislation that we have is PCPNDT Act of 1994, which also says that certain kind of diagnostic techniques can be applied on a woman while she is pregnant. so that certain deformities, if the child is having certain deformities, if the child is going through certain health related aspects, or if the mother is going through certain health problems, health risks, they can be identified at an early age, and certain and specific actions can be taken to provide and to protect women's health. So that is an overview about PCP and DT Act. Of course, it does talk about female feticide and prohibition on sex selective techniques to be applied on anyone who is pregnant. When we talk about occupational health related women, we find the ESI Act is there, which provides for health related services, and also the Factories Act 1948, which provides for specific rights of women, like a right to have safe and secured working atmosphere, certain minimum requirements that every employer should provide while they are employing women, washroom facilities, hygienic working conditions, etc. To name a few. I'm not focusing on all of them, but just giving you an overview about what all things we have protecting women's right to health in the Indian framework. So this is, we find this is an overview about legislations that we have in India. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yes, this is some very interesting data that I found I should be putting up before you all. The National Family Health Survey 2015-16 document, which collected data from almost 7 lakhs women from women in India. I will be highlighting only few of them, of course, looking into the time constraints. The NFS survey has found that women with whose body mass index is below normal, 22.9%. I feel that these figures are a concern for all of us. Why? Because if these are the figures, this only reflects upon the physical health of women. Friends, these are just figures which reflect on the physical health of women. I am not, rather, it is impossible to lay down any figures which address the mental and the emotional health of women, because we find that in India, women have been going through a lot of mental troubles. Like women faces a lot of domestic violence. Women time and again, they face a lot of problems in her family, a lot of problems that are faced in social fronts, which affects the emotional as well as the mental health of women, and for which there could not be any survey which can comprehensively address the mental, emotional, and intellectual health of women. So these are just figures which can address the physical health of women. And you all can see that the figures, I'll not just read all of them, just few of them which I feel are important. Women between 15 to 49 who are anemic, 53%. Women who have comprehensive knowledge of HIV/AIDS, just 20.9%. We find these figures, no, they are not only just concerns for us, but they are also a challenge before all of us when we talk about promoting and protecting women's right to health, especially while the women is going through the period of pregnancy, prenatal, and postnatal care. So next slide, please. We come to the challenges that we are all facing, the concerns before us. As I was talking that, yes, women are playing a very important role on all the fronts, maybe social, maybe economic, the role played by women in rural India. We find she works whole day for earning also, and also takes care of family, children, etc., everything. But on the other hand, we find that because we live in a very patriarchal society, we live in a very stereotypical kind of a setup wherein gender roles have been specified. We find that the right to health has always been undermined, has always unreached, because of various reasons, because of various factors, because not only just India that human rights are disregarded or violated, but this has been the case in across the globe. So this discrimination, which has its roots in our social values, in our social norms, I think we should address these specific societal norms so as to reach to the wider public, so as to spread sensitization and knowledge about women's rights, especially right to health, because many a times we find that women herself would not know that she has right to be healthy. And this is something that is the biggest challenge that we all are facing today. Exercising reproductive choices, like how many children to be born, or what should be the spacing between the children. Family planning, I suppose, a lot of research is required to be done as to how many times, in how many cases, women is able to exercise her reproductive choices. The very basic reason for not having exercised this reproductive choices is just because she does not know that this is her right to exercise her reproductive choices. And so with this, I would like to end. Thank you everyone for giving me this opportunity for sharing my views on women's right to health. I would conclude that there is a very long way when we talk about women's right to health, promoting and protecting women's right to health, because there are various aspects in which we can work together, maybe on individual level, at community level, and as well as at the institutional level, in order to protect and promote human rights. So as a woman, my message to all people in the society, let us take a pledge that yes, we will be sensitizing others. Let us take a pledge, let us take an oath that we will do all that is possible to promote and protect women's right to health, because if the women in the family is healthy, the entire family is healthy. That is what I believe, and that is what I conclude with. Thank you very much for providing me this opportunity and listening to me very patiently. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Namrata. You have been very rightly, you have pointed out that we often forget to tender to women's mental and emotional well-being. We do talk about women's physical well-being, but often the matters that deal with her mental well-being are brushed inside the carpet. A society that not only protects and promotes women's rights is bound to achieve incredible success. Now, I hand over the stage to Dr. Meera B. Agi to give her expert comments for the session. Over to you, Dr. Meera. Ma'am, you have to switch on your microphone. Microphone as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Asta, and thank you for presenting such a extensive work on women. But I feel that, I would like to know from you, what is the best way to inform women about their rights? Your last point was very well taken. You talked about everything and you said that women do not know much about their own health. So what is the best way to educate the women on their own health, on their own rights? I would say, can you throw some light on this?
Sure, ma'am. Ma'am, I believe that education, information, it begins from the school level. We do have the new education policy now, will be implemented very soon. But I feel a very special focus should be made on protecting and promoting right to health, especially of women, right from the beginning. What we have seen over a period of time is non-awareness about the rights of women. So I would say right from the school level to the university level, if this awareness is been given to children who are studying in the schools, I think that can go a very long way in protecting and promoting women's rights. This is one thing we can do. Another thing that I feel is NGOs, they play a very important role in protecting rights and in making the mending the social fabric of our society. So collectively, NGOs can also work on various projects wherein the right to health can be emphasized upon, and on which women can be educated. Government as such is also requiring to play a very proactive role, because we find that we should reach to every person in the society, and that is possible only when we have more and more personnel. So employing more and more people in the health front, in the health departments, and then training them, sensitizing them, so that reaches till the grassroots levels. I feel that when we talk about women's rights, it just does not stop while we sensitize and aware the women, but I feel that more sensitization is required to be given to men, because if only women will be sensitized, she'll say that yes, I'm having right to health, but if the family is not supporting, she will not be able to exercise her right to health. So I feel that concentrated efforts from all the sides from all the in all the manner requires to be taken, so that we can reach to every woman, every person in the society, and every individual in the society, in order to protect women's human right, especially the health rights. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, and what about gender equality? Would like to hear something. You tell us about the gender equality.
Ma'am, I do feel that is why I had included Article 14 when I was talking about constitutional provisions.
I saw that. Yes.
Yes. So we find that gender equality is very much required. In fact, the positive discrimination that we find in Article 15 Clause 3 and the legislations that we have in India, which protects various human rights of women and also the rights of health of women, are required. So when I say as a person of law, I feel that yes, lot of things have been done from the legislative perspective. We do have a lot of laws, we do have a lot of judgments, we do have a lot of no framework on paper. What actually is required is the implementation of these all things in practice. So when we talk about gender equality, it should not be just on paper, but it should be on practice. The biggest hurdle that we are facing in protecting gender equality is the stereotypical role which is played by gender, by men and women in our society. The cultural norms that we are all going through in our society, it's very difficult as such to change these stereotypical roles that we all have been playing. But yes, I think if the sensitization is been given that no, these things can be done by women also, these are the rights even women have, they should also exercise these all rights. So I think equality should not just be on paper, but it should be in practice also. And so we do have legislations, but yes, the right implementation in its letter and spirit of these legislations is something that is the call for the day.
I still feel that, I would like very much somebody tell me how to really educate women on their rights, so that they will know what is required from the society for them, and they will make a demand on it. Because right now, what happens is that there is complete silence on this. It's not possible for women to exert their rights because they don't even know what their rights are. And how are we going to inform them? For example, there are 960 million people, illiterate adults, and 2/3 of them are women. I mean, what do we do? What do we do? How can we handle this? The implementation seems to be lacking, and how do we bring in the implementation? Who is responsible for that? You talked about the government and you talked about the NGOs, but it is just mentioning. There is nothing as such, which is the mark that this is the organization which is going to educate women on their rights, and so that they will understand what their rights are. Now, I would ask the audience if they have any other question. Please come ahead. Astha?
We have a question from the audience. The person wants to ask, what are your views on reservation of women? Do you think it is necessary, and does it make a difference if we give reservation of women to women in politics or in educational institutes? Will it make a difference?
I think political reservation of women has always been in demand. Of course, we do have 1/3 at the Gram Panchayats and municipalities, but the same has the demand has been pending to have it in Parliament since a very long period of time. I think, see, any, not just reservation in education or reservation in political fronts will help. I feel that anything that we do for women empowerment, even a single awareness program or even a webinar like this, or even a short media message, social media message that we share with people, will at least help a small group of persons. So I feel that yes, if you bring in reservation, well and good, we'll have political representations. But I was listening from one of the speakers who is a Supreme Court lawyer on 26th of November when we had the Constitutional Day celebration, and she was just sharing her views that in one of the villages there is one woman who is the no, who is appointed in the Gram Panchayat because of the 73rd and the 74th Amendment. Now she's just for namesake, right? But the entire work which the person who is appointed or elected should be done is done by the husband. Now, just by bringing reservation, are we going to empower women? The answer is, I would say, it's not absolutely right. So what do we require? Yes, of course, reservation will bring women on the forefront, but actually just by bringing women on the forefront will not do. We need to do something more than that, right? So when we talk about education, reservation in education, I feel would not be a good idea, because Right to Education Act we have, it says every child is required to be educated, right? So but then I feel that yes, reservations can help to some extent, but not to a very large extent, because what we require today is the real sensitization and not the sensitization in the names, in the names for the name's sake. So sensitization, empowerment, knowing about the rights should actually be practiced and be implemented in the real sense. This is what I feel.
But isn't it a pity that we should talk about reservation for women? Women have got equal rights. We have two genders. They both are equal. Why do we need a reservation for women? They have got equal rights. I don't see any sense in this reservation at all. Whoever has asked this question, if they can explain a little bit more, I'll appreciate.
It's an anonymous question. We have another anonymous question also. The person is asking, are there any laws to control emotional well-being of women?
What does that mean?
Emotional well-being of a women.
Mental or emotional well-being.
See, no, we do not have any specific law, but yes, mental health has been identified in Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act 2005, which specifies that if it is a mental violence, so violence includes mental and emotional violence. So I could see, as of now, I could see only this particular legislation wherein domestic violence has been made to include emotional as well as mental violence.
Thank you for addressing the query. Thank you for joining us for this session. Last words from Dr. Meera.
Well, I think that, what you presented, of course, is not, everything is not understood by us because there is a lot of technicalities from your discipline. But we appreciate you have tried your best to explain to us what it means in common person's language. And I think that we appreciate that very much. But we would really, really think somebody from your discipline also address questions like, what does it mean? Women's right. Women's right means what? What? That means, can they be equal like men? How come that in society, when there are opportunities, and both men and women are of the same caliber, it's the man who is elected and not the women? I think what do we have to do about it is a moot question for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Any last words from Dr. Namrata?
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Meera, for expressing your views and giving us guidance. Also, indirectly, as to we do have a long way in promoting and protecting women's rights. And I think this is one direction where very concentrated efforts are required to be done. And I wish all of us are very best if we are taking up any issues for women's rights, women's health. I think that would be the best one. And yes, thank you very much for inviting me and listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you for the listeners, and thank you for the session chair and the session speaker for joining us. We'll be beginning our next session. Next slide, please. Our next speaker for the day is Mr. Gajendra Nautiyal. He's the state coordinator with Bachpan Bachao Andolan. Mr. Nautiyal has been advocating and protecting child rights since 1995. His work on child rights has yielded global award by the Plan International for Umang. He is closely associated with Bachpan Bachao Andolan. Bachpan Bachao Andolan is a campaigning for child rights. It is headed by Mr. Kailash Satyarthi, who has received a Nobel Prize in 1980. Over to you, Mr. Gajendra Nautiyal.
नमस्कार, आप सभी को नमस्कार। मैं हिंदी में बोलना ज्यादा पसंद करूंगा। अभी हम लोग नोबेल जो प्राइज मिला था सत्यार्थी जी को, वो 2014 में मिला था, नोबेल का पीस प्राइज था। तो वो उसी को 6th एनिवर्सरी हमारी ये चल रही है, उसको हम फ्रीडम वीक करके मना रहे हैं। आज ही से उसके बाद शुरुआत हुई और अभी हम लोग एक इंटर स्टेट्स का एक सेमिनार इस तरह से अटेंड कर रहे थे। आपका धन्यवाद आस्था जी, मीरा जी, आपका अनुभव हमें मिलता रहेगा। और अभी जो हम बात कर रहे थे ह्यूमन राइट्स का बिगिनिंग कैसा हुआ, तो मुझे लगता है जब वर्ल्ड वार हुआ था उसमें बहुत सारी चीजें थी, उसमें भी देखा गया था कि ज्यादातर जो वायलेशन हुआ था ह्यूमन राइट्स, इस तरह के कुछ वो नहीं थे, हर कोई हर किसी को भी काट मार रहा था। तो उसमें भी देखा गया था कि सबसे ज्यादा महिलाएं और बच्चे प्रभावित हुए थे। तो इसमें आगे जो ट्रीटीज, इंटरनेशनल ट्रीटीज हुई हैं, उसमें भी वुमेन्स के लिए अलग बना, इसी तरह से बच्चों के लिए भी अलग से ट्रीटीज बनी हैं, जिसको पूरी दुनिया के लोगों ने उसको आगे किया है। मेरे ख्याल से प्रेजेंटेशन नेक्स्ट स्लाइड प्लीज। हाँ, हेलो। तो ये जो ह्यूमन राइट्स का था, ये 48 में ऑफिशियली इस तरह का डिक्लेरेशन हुआ। तो उसमें भी आर्टिकल 25 में स्पेशल केयर और असिस्टेंस की बात हुई है, स्पेशल प्रोटेक्शन की बात हुई है, और प्रोटेक्शन मेंटली एंड फिजिकली तरह का प्रोटेक्शन की बात हुई थी। इसी तरह जो 89 में बच्चों के लिए इसी ह्यूमन राइट्स के आगे जो कड़ी है, उसमें देखते हैं हम लोग, तो चाइल्ड राइट्स के लिए 1989 में कन्विक्शन हुआ, और हमारे देश ने उसको 1992 में अपने इधर लागू किया। लेकिन भारत का जो संविधान है उसमें भी जो ये अनुच्छेद 20 में कहा गया है कि इस तरह के हमारे बच्चे हमारा भविष्य है, और जो हम लोग भी अक्सर अपने डायलॉग्स में बोलते रहते हैं कि हाँ, बच्चे हमारे भविष्य हैं और बच्चों के लिए कर रहे हैं। ज्यादातर लोगों का स्टेटमेंट होता है कि जो भी कर रहे हैं बच्चों के लिए कर रहे हैं, पर कितना कर रहे हैं कि इतने बड़े बड़े कानूनों को बनाने की जरूरत पड़ गई। बहुत सारे जो लॉ भारत में बने, 86 में एक लॉ था, 2000 में आप ये रेक्टिफिकेशन के बाद में हमारा 2000 में जो एक जुवेनाइल जस्टिस केयर एंड प्रोटेक्शन एक्ट बना, 15 में उस पर अमेंडमेंट हुआ, और अभी 19 में भी फिर से बहुत सारे बदलाव उसमें आए हैं, जोड़े गए हैं, कुछ चीजें जोड़ी गई हैं। इसी तरह से जो राइट टू एजुकेशन वाला 2009 में हम लोगों के पास में आया, उससे पहले एक माउंटिंग करने के लिए, जुवेनाइल जस्टिस एक्ट को माउंटिंग करने के लिए 2005 में एक नेशनल कमीशन फॉर प्रोटेक्शन ऑफ चाइल्ड राइट्स, एक कमीशन है जो स्टेट में भी है, और माउंटिंग करते हैं। ये प्रोटेक्शन ऑफ चिल्ड्रन फ्रॉम सेक्सुअल अब्यूज जो पोक्सो आया, ये बहुत बड़ा था। जो अभी मेरे से पहले जो वक्ता थी, आपने कहा था कि 2007 में एक पूरा नेशनल वाइड हम 23 स्टेट्स में किया गया था, एक सर्वे किया गया जिसमें कहा गया था कि जो 90% लड़कियां हैं, किसी न किसी तरह से उन्होंने सेक्सुअल वायलेंस को फेस किया है, उससे गुजरी हुई हैं। तो इसलिए 2012 में एक उससे पहले से कानून, क्योंकि अचानक नहीं बनते हैं, उसके पीछे बहुत सारे शोध होता है, बहुत सारे लोगों के साथ में कंसल्टेशन होते हैं। तो ये संयोग था कि उसी साल दिल्ली में इस तरह का एक नाबालिग लड़की के साथ में ये हो गया था, लेकिन ये कानून पहले से बन रहा था जो बहुत तेजी से टेबल हो पाया और उसको मतलब जो हमारी संसद ने पास कर दिया। तो अभी 19 में इसमें भी संशोधन हुए हैं। तो ये संशोधन और फिर हम लोगों का फिर 20 में अभी इसी साल को इसमें अब अलग से SOPs भी जारी हुई हैं। ये एक चाइल्ड लेबर जिसकी हम बात करते हैं, ये बहुत बड़ा दूसरा ऐसा मुद्दा है जो ट्रैफिकिंग से जुड़ा हुआ मुद्दा है। तो वो पूरा उस पे 1986 में जो चला था, तब से अब तक बहुत सारे इसमें संशोधन हुए हैं, बहुत सारी चीजें बदली हैं। और ह्यूमन ट्रैफिकिंग जो देखा गया है कि अलग-अलग चीजों के लिए ह्यूमन ट्रैफिकिंग हो रही है, जो मानव तस्करी हो रही है, तो वो तस्करी को देखते हुए अभी अलग से कानून तो नहीं बन रहा, लेकिन टेबल पिछले साल टेबल हुआ था लॉ जो ह्यूमन ट्रैफिकिंग पे। इस साल अभी तक टेबल नहीं हुआ, उसमें कुछ अमेंडमेंट की बात की गई है और अमेंडमेंट हुए हैं और फिर से टेबल होगा और फिर से लॉ बनेगा। ये है। नेक्स्ट स्लाइड प्लीज। जो ये कानून बनाने के इतने सारे जो लॉज जो बने हैं, जज हैं जो प्रचलन में है। नेक्स्ट स्लाइड प्लीज। नेक्स्ट स्लाइड। तो ये फिजिकल अब्यूज की बात हुई है। फिजिकल अब्यूज हम जो भौतिक रूप से जो शारीरिक शरीर पे बाहर से जो भी उत्पीड़न किया जाता है, उस उत्पीड़न को अब स्कूलों में बहुत ज्यादा था, जो कॉर्पोरल पनिशमेंट के अलग अलग फॉर्म्स थे, तो वो फिजिकली अब्यूज बहुत सारा है जो हमारे समाज में प्रचलित था और वो एक किस्म से समाज में मान्य था कि बच्चों के लिए तो पीटेंगे नहीं, तब तक तो बच्चे सुधरेंगे नहीं। तो ये रहा। तो बच्चों के बहुत सारे किसी को भी अगर पूछेंगे, बड़ा एडल्ट को पूछेंगे, आपको पूछें, मुझे पूछें, किसी को पूछें तो कि क्या याद है, तो सबसे बुरी बात वो जो किसी ने मेंटली हर्ट किया हो या फिजिकली हमको हर्ट किया, उसके फिजिकली वाले के तो निशान दिख जाते हैं शरीर के अंदर, लेकिन जो मेंटली आपको उसको अब्यूज किया हो वो हमें दिखता तो नहीं है, लेकिन फिजिकली आपको याद दिलाता रहता है। ये बहुत अलग अलग तरह के पनिशमेंट के तरीके और बहुत जगह बहुत विभत्स तरीके अपनाए जाते थे, स्कूलों में हो चाहे घरों में हो। एक सेक्सुअल अब्यूज है, जो सेक्सुअल अब्यूज जिसमें अभी पोक्सो में बहुत सारी बात हुई है, उसमें बहुत सारे अमेंडमेंट इसी वजह से कि हमारे इधर अलग अलग तरह की प्रचलन सेक्सुअल अब्यूज के आ रहे हैं अभी, तो वो उससे भी हमारे अलग अलग तरह के जो फॉर्म्स सेक्सुअल अब्यूज के हैं उसको रोकने के लिए पोक्सो एक्ट में बहुत सारी व्यवस्थाएं की गई हैं, बहुत डिटेल में व्यवस्थाएं की गई हैं। पहला शुरू जब 12 में हुआ था तो तब उस पे सिर्फ 7-8 पेज का डॉक्यूमेंट था, अब काफी बड़ा डॉक्यूमेंट बन गया है, उसमें SOPs जारी हुई हैं। इमोशनल अब्यूज ये जो है सबसे ज्यादा आज बच्चों के लिए वो है। आप देखेंगे कोरोना काल में तो और ज्यादा इमोशनली बच्चा अपने को अलग अकेला महसूस कर रहा है। ये जो उस सेल्फ स्टीम है, उसके अपने होने का, मेरे अस्तित्व का, उस अस्तित्व को खत्म करता है। जुवेनाइल जस्टिस एक्ट में एक लाइन का उल्लेख किया गया है कि बच्चा, जैसे महिलाओं के कानून में, भारत के महिला के जो कानून है उसमें लिखा गया एक लाइन कि महिला किसी की संपत्ति नहीं है, प्रॉपर्टी नहीं है। ऐसे बच्चे आपकी प्रॉपर्टी नहीं है, आप जैसे चाहो वैसे बाप होने के नाते या किसी होने के नाते। तो ये इसीलिए इस तरह की व्यवस्था की गई है क्योंकि खुद बाप भी, हमने देखा खुद बाप भी जो इमोशनल अब्यूज करता है, माँ इमोशनल अब्यूज करती है बच्चे का, अब वो अपने जो अपने मन में जो दूसरी जो ग्रंथियां हैं, जो अलग अलग दिक्कतें उसको आती हैं, उन दिक्कतों को सारे उस पे बच्चे पे थोपने के, या हम लोग पावर गेम, ये पावर गेम है जो अब्यूज करने का पावर गेम है कि मैं मैं तो कर सकता हूँ, मैं बड़ा हूँ, मैं तो कुछ भी कर सकता हूँ। और ये इमोशनल अब्यूज में सबसे ज्यादा इमोशनल अब्यूज किया जाता है। एक उदाहरण बता रहा हूँ, उत्तराखंड में एक लास्ट गांव है चाइना से लगा हुआ, वहां एक बच्ची को हम लोग एक अल्टरनेट रिपोर्ट बना रहे थे यूएन के लिए, तो वहां एक रिपोर्ट बच्ची ने रिपोर्ट की, उनको मीडिया टूल्स सिखाया गया, तो उसने रिपोर्ट किया कि ये मैं अपना स्कूल छोड़ चुकी हूँ क्योंकि मेरे स्कूल में गुरुजी मुझे हमेशा कहते हैं कि अब इतनी लंबी हो चुकी है तो घुटने पे अक्कल है क्या। और ये बात 10 दफे उसको सुनने को मिला, उसने स्कूल ही छोड़ दिया है। और वो उस किताबों से स्कूल ही नहीं छोड़ा, उसने वो जो किताबें हैं उसकी, उन किताबों को फाड़ फोड़ के फेंक दिया। और जब भी किताब देखती थी तो वो किताबों से इतना ऐसे अपना नफरत से हो गई थी उससे, किताबों से, उस पढ़ाई से। तो ये जो इमोशनल अब्यूज है, ये इस तरह का हर्ट करता है। ऐसा आपका जो सेक्सुअल अब्यूज है, चाहे फिजिकल अब्यूज भी है, उसमें भी बहुत सारी चीजें ऐसी इसी तरह का प्रभाव दिखते हैं बच्चे को। आप स्कूल में देखें, बच्चे का बस्ता अस्त व्यस्त है, उसका किताबें अस्त व्यस्त हैं, उसने फाड़ दी हैं किताबें, या अपने ये कपड़े अंट संट पहन रहा है, तो वो एक किस्म से इन अब्यूजेस का नतीजा है। नेग्लिजेंस, जो हम लोग बच्चे को नेग्लेक्ट करते हैं, जो उसको दे सकते थे वो चीजें नहीं दे रहे हैं, चाहे खाना हो, चाहे रहने के लिए कोई जगह हो, बैठने के लिए कोई जगह हो, इस तरह की जो चीजें हैं, ये नेग्लिजेंसी जो है वो भी बच्चे को मानसिक रूप से और शारीरिक रूप से दोनों तरह से प्रभावित करती हैं। ये जो शोषण है, एक्सप्लॉइटेशन है बच्चों का, जो हम देखते हैं चाइल्ड लेबर के फॉर्म में, या ऊपर सेक्सुअल इसका कॉज के लिए, या सेक्सुअल हरासमेंट के लिए ट्रैफिकिंग किया जाता है, या बच्चे को अंगदान के लिए ट्रैफिक किया जाता है। तो ये अपने फायदे के लिए, बड़े लोग अपने फायदे के लिए बच्चों का उपयोग कर रहे हैं। या आपका डोमेस्टिक सर्वेंट है, आपके चंडीगढ़ और यहाँ तो बहुत सारे देखे हैं, यहाँ बड़ी सिटी में उतने ज्यादा हैं जो बच्चों को ज्यादातर अपने डोमेस्टिक सर्वेंट रख रहे हैं। कुछ मेडिकल अब्यूजेस भी देखने को मिलते हैं, जो अलग अलग ज्यादातर बड़ी सिटीज में इस तरह का देखने को मिलता है। और एक अभी जो नया टर्म्स आया है, ऑनलाइन चाइल्ड अब्यूज की बात है। ऑनलाइन जो चाइल्ड अब्यूज हो रहे हैं, इस कोरोना काल में हम लोगों ने देखा है कि पूरे दुनिया के अंदर सबसे ज्यादा ऑनलाइन चाइल्ड अब्यूज हुआ है, क्योंकि ज्यादातर बच्चे ऑनलाइन हैं, चाहे पढ़ाई के लिए। हमारे भारत में भी अभी आपने दिल्ली का वो केस सुना होगा, वहां बच्चे आपस में इसी तरह का चैट कर रहे थे, और इस तरह से जो कंटेंट्स थे वो शेयर कर रहे थे। तो उस पर बहुत सारा ये सिर्फ एक केस है जो रिपोर्ट हुआ है, ऐसे बहुत सारे केस हैं जो हमारे देश के अंदर या दुनिया के दूसरे देशों में हुआ है ऑनलाइन। और ये इसके लिए अभी आप देखेंगे तो हमारे पास में अभी बहुत सारी व्यवस्थाएं नहीं है इस तरह की, साइबर बुलिंग हो या दूसरे जो 6-7 तरह से अलग अलग तरह से बच्चों को जो ऑनलाइन अब्यूज किया जाता है। तो उसके लिए हमारे पास में पुलिस व्यवस्थाएं नहीं हैं। इस बात को लेकर अभी जो जो स्कूल्स हो, या जो हमारे लीगल अवेयरनेस के लिए जो चीजें जो संगठन काम करते हैं, उनके पास में भी बहुत सारा नेटवर्क नहीं है जो बच्चों तक पहुंच पाए, और इस तरह माँ बापों तक पहुंच पाए कि वो अपने बच्चों को किस तरह से इससे बचा सकते हैं। लेकिन कुछ एनजीओज हैं जो उस पर काम कर रहे हैं। नेक्स्ट स्लाइड प्लीज। ये अभी जो हम बहुत सारे जो अब्यूजेज हैं उनको रिपोर्ट कर सकते हैं। चाइल्ड हेल्पलाइन है आपके, अभी लगभग सभी जिलों में उसको स्थापित किया गया है। वो कोई एनजीओ चलाते हैं, और इसमें ये है कि आप उनके लिए 1098 पे जैसे भी कोई एडल्ट करे फोन या बच्चा करे डायरेक्ट, उनकी अपनी दिक्कतों को मेंटली या फिजिकली या कुछ भी दिक्कतें हैं उसको अगर रिपोर्ट करता है, फोन करता है, तो उनके लिए वो सबसे महत्वपूर्ण है। वो हर कॉल को अटेंड करते हैं और हर कॉल का रिकॉर्ड रखते हैं। प्रत्येक पुलिस जो थाना है, जो आपके पुलिस स्टेशन जहाँ भी हैं, शहर में या गांव में, उनमें एक चाइल्ड वेलफेयर ऑफिसर्स है जो पुलिस का, उसको अपॉइंट किया गया है, जिसको बच्चों के लॉ के बारे में सब मालूम है। उनको किसी भी थाने में आप फोन कर सकते हैं, रिपोर्ट कर सकते हैं, अपनी शिकायत दर्ज कर सकते हैं। उसके लिए उनके पास में वो अधिकारी होता है जो स्पेशल अटेंड करेगा आपके इश्यूज को। चाइल्ड प्रोटेक्शन सोसाइटीज हैं प्रत्येक डिस्ट्रिक्ट में, वो आपको देखेंगे। प्रत्येक गांव तक इसका नेटवर्क बनाने की बात की गई है। कुछ जगह ये नेटवर्क गांव तक पहुंचा है, ब्लॉक तक पहुंचा है, जो डेवलपमेंट ब्लॉक है वहां तक पहुंचा है, और प्रत्येक डिस्ट्रिक्ट में है। किसी भी इंस्टीट्यूशन का हेड को आप रिपोर्ट करेंगे, जो भी अब्यूजेज होते हैं, चाहे आप उस स्कूल के हेड हैं, हेडमास्टर हैं, प्रिंसिपल हैं, आप किसी बस में जा रहे हैं तो उसका कंडक्टर है, या कोई भी जो हेड लीड कर रहा है, जिसकी कस्टडी में बच्चे हैं, तो उसको आप रिपोर्ट कर सकते हैं। अगर उसके लिए प्रोविजन किए गए हैं, अगर वो उस रिपोर्ट को नहीं सुनता है या इग्नोर करता है, तो उसके लिए भी कानून में व्यवस्था की गई है। चाइल्ड वेलफेयर सोसाइटी प्रत्येक डिस्ट्रिक्ट में, ब्लॉक में और आपके स्टेट में है। लीगल सर्विस अथॉरिटी है जो आपके प्रत्येक जिले में है, और बहुत सारे एनजीओ हैं जो अलग अलग तरह से काम कर रहे हैं। ये आप हम लोगों का भी एक अपना हेल्पलाइन नंबर है जो आपको टोल फ्री है। ये 1800-102-722। तो इस पे भी हम लोग आप लोग कंप्लेन कर सकते हैं, अपनी बात रख सकते हैं, और मेंटली फिजिकली किसी भी तरह का अब्यूज होता है तो उस पे हम लोग आपको सभी तरह की जो सुविधाएं हैं जो प्रत्येक जगह स्थानीय स्तर पर दी जाती है वो प्रोवाइड कर सकते हैं। मेरी तरफ से धन्यवाद। मोटे मोटे तौर पे बच्चों के जो कानून हैं, वो बच्चों के कानून जो है बहुत सारे कानून तो बने हैं। जैसे अभी नम्रता जी थी, वो बता रही थी कि बहुत सारे कानून बने हुए हैं, बहुत सारी व्यवस्थाएं हैं, और उस मामले में हम दुनिया के सबसे अच्छे कानून बनाने वाले लोग हैं। लेकिन इम्प्लीमेंटेशन का बहुत दिक्कत है। जब इम्प्लीमेंट होती हैं चीजें, तब उसमें एक पैशंस नहीं है, उस तरह का एक कंपैशन नहीं है, दिखता वो खूब सारा ऐसा लगता है कि मशीन काम कर रहे हैं। तो वो धारणा से बाहर आने की जरूरत है। और 44% जो पॉपुलेशन इंडिया की है, वो सेंसस 11 में कहा गया, वो बच्चे हैं, और दुनिया के 15% पॉपुलेशन हमारे बच्चों की है, भारत के बच्चों की है। हम सबसे यंग देश के रूप में आगे बढ़ रहे हैं। लेकिन इस तरह के ये सोचने की जरूरत है, आप लोगों को भी, हमको भी, हम सबको, क्योंकि हम अकेले कुछ नहीं कर सकते हैं, कोई भी अकेला कुछ नहीं कर सकता है। सब मिलके करें तो इस पे कुछ अच्छे सकारात्मक परिणाम आ सकते हैं। और जैसे हम बोल रहे हैं कि फ्रीडम वीक, हम इस पूरे वीक चलेंगे आज से, तो उसमें भी आप हमारे साथ जुड़ सकते हैं। हमारी वेबसाइट पे आपके लिए लॉग इन करने के लिए और जुड़ने के लिए ऑप्शंस हैं। थैंक यू।
Thank you so much, Gajendra Di. I totally agree. Being from the legal fraternity, I believe that we are very good draftsmen. हम law बना तो लेते हैं, but when it comes to implementation, we are very poor at it. So in every aspect, the real question is of implementation of the law. Now I would request our chair, Dr. Meera Biagi, to give her expert comments. Ma'am, your microphone is off. Yes, ma'am.
What actually bothers me is that if you can, do you have any provision in helping children themselves to understand what is child abuse and how can they protect themselves against this child abuse?
Yeah.
And do we have any?
मीरा जी, अभी एक लीगल सर्विस अथॉरिटी है प्रत्येक स्टेट की, या नेशनल लीगल सर्विस अथॉरिटी है, उनका एक प्रोग्राम चलता है आपके प्रत्येक स्कूल में जो बड़े बच्चों के लिए, ठीक हुआ। एक तो ये है, और जो हम बात कर रहे हैं चाइल्ड प्रोटेक्शन सोसाइटी, जिसको विलेज लेवल तक फॉर्म होना है और वहाँ पंचायत के माध्यम से उसको लागू किया जाना, तो वहाँ भी अवेयरनेस के लिए इस तरह की व्यवस्था की गई है कि वो हो। तो स्कूल में और स्कूल के बाहर गांव में दोनों तरह का ये है अवेयरनेस करने के लिए। शहरों के लिए भी इस तरह की व्यवस्था, ये नहीं है कि सिर्फ गांव के लिए, रूरल में ही होगा, अर्बन में नहीं होगा, सभी जगह के लिए इस तरह की व्यवस्थाएं की गई हैं। वो इम्प्लीमेंटेशन का थोड़ा सा इश्यू है, वो धीरे धीरे आ रहा है। जैसे आप देखेंगे 1908 जो अपना चाइल्ड लाइन है, वो हेल्पलाइन है, वो उसका भी अभी तक सभी डिस्ट्रिक्ट में नहीं हुआ, वो स्टेट सब्जेक्ट है, उसको एनजीओ सेलेक्ट करने हैं। ऐसे ही अब स्कूल्स में भी, अभी स्कूल्स में प्राइमरी से प्राइमरी के अपर प्राइमरी एंड पूरे 12वीं तक की कक्षाओं के लिए भी अभी एक चाइल्ड सेफ्टी के नाम से एक पूरा वो बनाया गया है, एक सिलेबस बन रहा है, अभी बनी ही रहा है। तो उसमें चाइल्ड अब्यूजेज क्या हैं, ये सारी चीजें उसमें शामिल होंगी। इवन जो डिजास्टर से सेफ्टी के लिए क्या क्या किया जाना चाहिए, अब्यूजेज, ये सारी चीजों को मिला के एक सेफ्टी के लिए, चाइल्ड सेफ्टी वाला एक पूरा वो बन रहा है, सिलेबस बन रहा है।
नहीं, वो मैं समझती हूँ कि आपने चाइल्ड सेफ्टी का नेटवर्क एस्टेब्लिश किया है, वो बहुत इट्स वेल टेकन। और मैं समझती हूँ जैसे कि चाइल्ड लेबर है या मिसट्रीटिंग चिल्ड्रन इन स्कूल्स बाय द टीचर और मिसट्रीटिंग children by other children, that I understand. But I'm talking about the very, very sensitive child abuse that children go through, like sex abuse or something like that. You know, a child at a very young age who is, who doesn't understand anything, but he feels very uncomfortable in the company of some people, and he doesn't know how to behave himself. And do we have anything to deal with such kind of cases also? Because I remember that, that there was once upon a time I had heard that there were some designing of the programs where they were teaching children, how they should know whether somebody is respecting their body or mistreating with them. Do we have anything like that here? I know that there are other things that you have,
ये आपका इंटीग्रेटेड चाइल्ड प्रोटेक्शन स्कीम अब लॉन्च हुई थी, जिसको अब स्टेट चाइल्ड प्रोटेक्शन सर्विसेज का नाम दिया गया है। इसमें एक पूरी व्यवस्था की गई है। नॉट ओनली वो, सब बाकी जितने भी जो डिपार्टमेंट हैं, हेल्थ है, आपका एजुकेशन है, मैं जो आपको बता रहा था कि अभी एक सिलेबस बन रहा है, तो ऐसे एजुकेशन हेल्थ के लिए भी बन रहा है। ये सारे लोग कैसे, जहां भी बच्चा जाता है, जहां भी बच्चा जाता है, वहां बच्चे को वो मतलब वो सर्विसेज, वो सुविधाएं मिलती रही हैं। पुलिस को उसके लिए स्पेशल सेल है, स्पेशल ट्रेनिंग दी जा रही है पुलिस को भी। इवन जुडिशरी को हम लोगों ने दूसरे देशों में शुरू हुआ, यहाँ भारत में अभी हमने बिहार में शुरू किया था, भारत सरकार के साथ में माननीय सुप्रीम कोर्ट के साथ मिलकर हमने कहा यहाँ भी क्यों नहीं हो सकता इस तरह की। जुडिशरी को सब कुछ पता नहीं होता, जो निर्णय देता है उसको भी बहुत सारी चीजें पता नहीं, तो वहां भी हम लोगों ने कोशिश की। जो मेडिकल एक्सपर्ट हैं, प्रोफेशनल्स हैं, उनके लिए भी हम लोगों ने शुरू किया था। तो हम ये बोल रहे हैं कि अब ये चीजें जो ये एक्सपेरिमेंट के हिसाब से चली हैं, वो गवर्नमेंट अपने उसमें लाए, गवर्नमेंट अपने आप उन चीजों को चलाए। तो इसके लिए प्रयास हो रहे हैं हमारे देश में, पूरे दुनिया के दूसरे देशों में। तो ये एक सेफ्टी नेट बनाने की बात है, जहां भी बच्चे को जरूरत है वहां उसके लिए वो नेट उपलब्ध है, वो लोग उपलब्ध हैं जो उसको डील करेंगे।
Thank you very much. Thank you. Astha, I think we are done with this.
We have one question from Dr. Rakesh Gupta, Rajasthan. He is a senior cessation expert. वो पूछना चाहते हैं कि क्या आपकी संस्था बचपन बचाओ आंदोलन is also working for children कि उनके tobacco usage कम हो या वो tobacco usage ना करें या tobacco usage छुड़ाने के लिए किसी भी प्रकार का tobacco related कोई काम कर रहे हैं?
आपको 3 साल पहले पंजाब की खबरें अगर आप पढ़ती होंगी पंजाब की, तो वहाँ ओवरडोज या कोई मर गया ये नहीं आता था। तो हम लोगों ने कोशिश की है वहाँ के सरकार के साथ में, स्पेशली था तो बच्चों के लिए, लेकिन फिर वो बड़ों के साथ भी हुआ है। और अब आप रिपोर्टिंग तो देखती होंगी, नहीं तो जो देखते थे, जो पहले दफे गिरफ्तार हुए थे उसमें सारे लोग इन्वॉल्व थे, पत्रकार से लेके, नेता से लेके और तमाम राजनीतिक दलों के, इवन कांग्रेस जो लीड कर रही थी तो वो उनके भी लोग थे। तो उन्होंने इस तरह हम लोग देखे सब्सटेंस यूज का पूरा सब्सटेंस, नॉट ओनली टोबैको, पूरा सब्सटेंस यूज का होता है, जो शुरुआत से लेकर लास्ट तक बहुत सारी चीजें हैं जो ऐसे मजाक में शुरू हो जाते हैं लोग और फिर बाद में बड़ा वो हो जाता है। तो ये पूरा सब्सटेंस यूज का इस पे हुआ। और ये अब 11 जो स्टेट हैं हमारे पंजाब से लेके और अरुणाचल तक का, ये पूरा का एक जो नेटवर्क था, इस नेटवर्क पुलिस नेटवर्क बना है। और जल्दी यहाँ हरियाणा में, यहाँ पंचकुला में उसका वो बनेगा एक हेडक्वार्टर जहाँ नेटवर्किंग का वो है। बट इनकी मीटिंगें शुरू हो गई हैं, जो इंफॉर्मेशन शेयरिंग शुरू हो गई हैं आपस में। तो ये उस तरह का हमारा काम, हम बहुत सारे काम नहीं कर सकते हैं, बहुत सारे, लेकिन हम फोकस हैं चाइल्ड राइट्स को। हम राइट बेस्ड ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है तो हम राइट्स पे काम करते हैं, लेकिन हाँ बच्चे से जुड़ा जितना मुद्दा है उसको हम जहाँ जरूरत होती है उसको एडुकेट करते हैं, बताते हैं, उसके तरीके निकालने के लिए बहुत सारे एक्सपर्टों को एक जगह लाते हैं और वो समाधान निकले, वो सरकार उसको टेक ओवर करे।
My next question is both गजेंद्र जी के लिए भी और नम्रता जी के लिए भी. What do you think is the relationship, how necessary it is to protect women right for protecting child rights and vice versa? How necessary it is to protect child rights for protecting women rights? Do we see any relationship between it? First, Mr. Gajendra.
ये देखो, महिला और बच्चे का जो रिश्ता है इसको आप तो अलग नहीं कर सकते हैं, क्योंकि इसको जो ये देखेंगे। और जब मैंने शुरुआत इसलिए की थी उससे कि वर्ल्ड वार जब हुई थी, फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड वार या सेकंड वर्ल्ड वार में देखा गया था, तो ये सबसे ज्यादा चिंता का विषय था कि महिलाएं और बच्चे सबसे ज्यादा प्रभावित होते हैं। आज भी जो भी वार होती है या ये जो आपदाएं आती हैं जितनी भी, उससे सबसे ज्यादा प्रभावित महिलाएं होती हैं। और पुरुष तो निकल जाते हैं लेकिन सबसे ज्यादा प्रभावित होते हैं। एक दूसरे के रिलेशन हैं, एक दूसरे के बिना मतलब बात नहीं की जा सकती। इसलिए आप देखेंगे ज्यादातर कानूनों में एक दूसरे, जैसे एक के लिए कहा गया कि उसका पार्टिसिपेशन मस्ट होना चाहिए, उसकी राय जरूर ली जानी चाहिए। तो उस बच्चे के लिए भी वही है, बिहेवियर, ये दोनों को एक किस्म से देखें हमारे देश के अंदर वो मतलब गूंगा बना दिया हमने। माता भगवती बोल बोल के माता है तो सब कुछ है, तो पूजा कर करके गूंगा बना दिया। बट वो चीजों को कुछ लोगों के स्वार्थों ने बनाया है। तो ऐसे ये जो एक रिश्ते हैं इनको स्मूथ हो, इसके लिए कानूनों में भी व्यवस्था की गई है और उनको एक्सप्लेन अगर ढंग से कर पाए, इवन योजनाओं में जो हम बोलते हैं, नम्रता जी कह रहे थे कि आपका प्रोटेक्शन जरूरी है, आपका पार्टिसिपेशन जरूरी है, और तब प्रोविजंस हो जाए तो इन प्रोटेक्शन एंड पार्टिसिपेशन के बाद प्रोविजंस भी उस तरह के हो जाए तो बल्ले बल्ले। नहीं तो ये दो चीजें प्राथमिक हैं, उसके बाद हम बात कर सकते हैं कि प्रोविजंस भी हों। प्रोविजंस सबसे बड़ी वही होती है, प्रोविजंस को लागू करने में वहां कमीशन को पता नहीं क्या क्या आ जाए। पर ये दो चीजें हम पहले वो करना चाहिए हमें, प्रोटेक्शन एंड पार्टिसिपेशन, महिला हो या बच्चे।
Thank you, Mr. Gajendra. Over to you, Dr. Namrata. What relationship you seek between child rights protection and women right protection? How important it is to protect both of them in society?
मैं नौटियाल जी से पूरी तरह से सहमत हूँ। मैं मानती हूँ कि अगर दोनों का ही प्रोटेक्शन बहुत ही जरूरी है। जैसे हम वल्नरेबल ग्रुप्स की भी अगर बात करते हैं तो ये दो कैटेगरीज वल्नरेबल ग्रुप्स में आती हैं। तो हम नहीं सोच पाएंगे कि चलो सिर्फ विमेन का करें या चिल्ड्रन का करें, दे आर ऑल इंटरलिंक्ड। तो जैसे नौटियाल जी ने कहा है वैसा भी मेरा ही स्टैंड है कि दे आर इंटरलिंक्ड, वॉट एवर वी हैव जैसे प्रोविजंस है, पर उसको इम्प्लीमेंटेशन करो, उसको सही ढंग से सही तरह से सही लोगों तक पहुंचाना ही सबसे बड़ा चैलेंज है और सबसे बड़ा काम है। थैंक यू।
Thank you. Any last words from Dr. Meera? Dr. Meera is joining us from California and she has a huge time difference. Thank you for joining us. Ma'am, your last words for this session.
That's fine. That's fine. I think that we really had very, very good exposition of the two problems. I mean, it's true that not all of us are wholly, cognizant with all these problems. But I think that, they affect all of us, and we have to really come to a solution on these problems. And these two people have given their very best in this explanation, and we really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Meera. Thank you all the listeners, and thank you, the chair, Dr. Meera, and the speakers for the day. Thank you everybody for joining us for this session. I believe and hope that we will keep protecting and promoting rights of children and rights of women, because these are two unalienable rights of the society. We will shortly begin with our next session. Can we have the next slide, please? Our next session is the session on protecting and promoting right to environment from the scourge of tobacco use. Next slide. Tobacco use is an extremely dangerous substance for our body. All of us are well aware that tobacco causes irreparable harm to our body, be it smoking, like smoking from cigarettes, be it the use of SLT, other smokeless substances. There's not a single part of our body that is not affected by tobacco use, be it our eyes, be it our chest or abdomen, be it our heart, be it our lungs, be it our ears, be it our throat, be it our skeletal system, be it our leg and feet, be it our circulatory system. There's not a single body part that is not affected by the use of tobacco. Next slide, please. Besides harming our body, tobacco causes other serious harms to our psychological health. Tobacco also impacts our environment. Processes involved in tobacco cultivation and manufacturing are an emerging threat to our environment, and we'll be discussing them today. Smoke and tobacco waste emitted from tobacco use hampers the freedom and the rights of other individuals. It is a barrier between their right to clean and safe environment. Next slide, please. The right to clean and safe environment is a basic human right. Every human being, by virtue of being a human, has a right to live in a clean, safe, and healthy environment. It is an unalienable right, as we also discussed earlier. Without a safe environment, the existence of human beings is impossible. So it is a fundamental, unalienable right. All across the world, constitutions, our laws, our legal system are protecting the right to healthy environment. Preventable steps have been taken due to the activism of the judiciary and the legal system. Laws have been drafted and discussions all across the globe are taking place. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Our very first speaker of the day is Dr. Astha Chugh. She is a research officer with Hriday. Dr. Astha is a registered dental surgeon. She holds a master's degree in public health from the University of Glasgow, United Kingdom. Through her work, Dr. Chugh has contributed to various research papers, activities, and programs such as Indian Tobacco Industry Index, Walk the Talk, content coding for tobacco imaginary in Bollywood movies, and on streaming platforms. Next slide, please. I would now request Dr. Astha Chugh to begin with her presentation. Over to you, Astha.
Thank you, Dr. Bagga, and thank you, everyone. It was very enriching first session, and very nicely portrayed about the women's right, and I was really looking forward to it. Now, talking about the tobacco and environment, um, I would like to start from some key facts about tobacco. Next slide, please. So over 1.3 billion people over the world use tobacco, and about 80% of these people live in low and middle income countries. Of these 1.3 billion people who use tobacco, 266 million tobacco users are in India. And as we know, half of these users die prematurely due to tobacco-related illnesses, such as lung diseases, respiratory diseases, and we have a lot of health effects of tobacco that is known. And over 1 million deaths are annually attributed to tobacco in India itself. The highest burden of death and disease among women and children are due to the exposure of tobacco smoke, whether it be second-hand smoking or third-hand smoking, and therefore women and children are most vulnerable to tobacco use. Next slide, please. But when we talk about the environmental impact of tobacco, it's a largely overlooked problem. Though we know about the health impacts of tobacco consumption, as Astha also demonstrated in her slide, that there are tobacco causes CVD, and it's a major risk factor for causing non-communicable diseases, that is NCDs. But when we talk about the impact of tobacco on environment, it is often not recognized and not prioritized. Therefore, it is important to understand the environmental consequences of tobacco because it moves from an individual problem from the tobacco users to whole of the human problem. And it affects not just the lives of tobacco consumer, but those who are involved in the industry, the tobacco manufacturers or the poor farmers, and therefore as a planet as a whole. Next slide, please. So when we talk about the life cycle of tobacco from the cultivation to consumer stage, tobacco is often grown as a monocrop, that is without rotation of crop. And therefore it leaves a lot of insects and ultimately leads to soil erosion and also the plant destruction, that is the tobacco plant destruction itself. And therefore it requires a lot of pesticides and fertilizers to protect it, which has a very harmful effect on the environment, and it can lead to deforestation, which emits carbon dioxide and has greenhouse effect, and therefore can result in loss of biodiversity. Now, when we talk about the tobacco curing stage, it refers to the drying of tobacco leaves for further production. So there is a disease called green tobacco sickness, which is a type of nicotine poisoning caused by the dermal absorption, that is the skin absorption of tobacco, of the nicotine from the surface of wet tobacco plants. So tobacco farmers are more prone and they are at very high risk of this tobacco, green tobacco sickness, and it has a very lethal effect on their body. So overall, the tobacco consumption and and the curing are one of the most environmentally destructive agricultural practices in the countries which are high producers of tobacco. And as we all know, India is the second largest producer of tobacco in the world, and therefore, it's at a very high risk of environmental deteriorations of tobacco. When we talk about the tobacco consumption, next slide, please. Tobacco emits a lot of chemicals, over 7,000 chemicals, whether it be poisonous gases, including hydrogen cyanide, ammonia, toluene, butane, carbon monoxide, and toxic metals as well, like arsenic, cadmium, and chromium, lead, and also causes a lot of cancer-causing chemicals, emits a lot of cancer-causing chemicals. So when the tobacco smoke is emitted in the environment, it leads to, the environment gets filled with these poisonous gases, and it can have a very deteriorating effect on the environment. Next slide, please. So tobacco smoke pollutes indoor and outdoor environments and remain a persistent and persistent source of toxicants long after the cigarette has been smoked, long tobacco smoke contributes to thousands metric tons of known human carcinogens, other toxicants, and greenhouse gases. Toxic emissions include formaldehyde, nicotine, and three major greenhouse carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide gases. So as we know, this greenhouse effect can result in loss of biodiversity. So therefore, from the stage of cultivation of tobacco to the consumption of tobacco, it has very deteriorating effect on the environment. Next slide, please. So as I said, India is the second largest producer of tobacco in the world. The transportation of tobacco has also effect on the environment, and China, Brazil, and India are the largest tobacco leaf growers in the world. Next slide, please. So pollution resulting from the manufacture and transporting of tobacco is one of the greatest sources of tobacco's environmental damage. Large amount of energy, water, and other resources used in its manufacture and enormous waste is generated by this process. In 1995, researchers estimated that the annual global environmental cost of tobacco manufacturing included 2 million metric tons of solid waste, 300,000 metric tons of nicotine contaminated waste, and 2,000 metric tons of chemical waste. The globalization of tobacco growing and the transportation of finished products to its point of sale often involves extensive transport cost also, usually by diesel-driven trucks, and therefore has environmental cost. Next slide, please. So even after the consumption of tobacco, tobacco does not leave the environment. So the residues of tobacco products, such as cigarette butts or the smokeless tobacco packets, are most commonly littered items on the roads and other sites. And although tobacco industry claims that the cigarette filters are made from the cellulose acetate, which is a biodegradable plastic, but it only degrades after several biological circumstances. In practice, however, cigarette butts tossed on streets and beaches do not biodegrade very easily, and it takes almost 9 months for the cigarette butts to degrade, and it leaves a very harmful effect on the environment because it contains plastic in it. Also, these cigarettes and beedi butts, when degraded carelessly, hazardous chemicals like nicotine, arsenic, and heavy metals leach out in the surrounding environment, thus contaminating it. It can acutely toxic to aquatic organisms if they leach out in water bodies and cause water pollution as well. Next slide, please. So if we talk about Indian scenario, as I said, India is one of the largest has one of the largest tobacco farming industry. In India, 68,000 hectares of forests were removed between 1962 and 2002 at an average of 17,000 hectares annually. The tobacco industry is a heavy polluter and is enlisted by Environment Ministry under the red category, that is under heavily polluting category. The irony lies in the fact that the beedi industry is permitted to continue as a cottage industry, home-based unit, while the continuing to expose workers and their families to serious health hazards, including the green tobacco sickness and other diseases which can be caused by the leaching out of nicotine from the tobacco to these farmers. This allows many tobacco manufacturing units to operate within the residential areas, which results in pollution of surrounding water bodies and soil within within the local areas of this tobacco growing. Next slide, please. So in the conclusion, the article and guidelines of WHO FCTC Article 18 mentions that parties agree to have due regard to protect the environment and the health of persons in relation to the environment in respect to tobacco cultivation and manufacture within their respective territories. But it has been seen that successful efforts to reduce the health impacts of tobacco have not the environmental impact of tobacco has not been prioritized. a comprehensive environmental approach incorporating true cost for environmental loss is thus vital and is very important to effective tobacco control measures. One of the way to do is by imposing taxation on tobacco products on both manufacturers of tobacco and consumers. It is often seen that tobacco industry routinely move their plants to areas within less stringent environmental laws. So we have seen over the years that tobacco industry has moved from high income countries to low income countries where there are not stringent environmental laws. And therefore, it is necessary to hold tobacco industry more accountable in every country for minimizing the damage to the environment. Next slide, please. So just quoting from WHO that there is no such thing as a safe cigarette and there is no such thing as an environmentally neutral tobacco industry. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Astha. It has been rightly said, tobacco industry has created quite a mess in our environment, and it's high time we take action against it. The next speaker for our day, next slide, please. The next speaker for the day is Dr. Amit Yadav. He's a technical advisor, senior technical advisor with the union. Dr. Yadav has been working in tobacco control for 13 years, and he was selected for the prestigious Global Tobacco Control Leadership Program by the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health and emerging leader in tobacco control by the World Heart Federation. Dr. Yadav has also elected as the board member for the board of directors of Framework Convention Alliance representing the Southeast Asia region for the year 2016 to 19. Dr. Yadav's book on public health, tobacco and trade in India was published by Thomas Reuters and highlights the problem of tobacco use in India. Over to you, Dr. Amit Yadav. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Astha, and thank you, GSA, for organizing this very important webinars, series of webinars on human rights and and different aspects. And I really enjoyed attending this. We in India are actually, as Nautiyalji was telling, and other speakers were also talking about rights-based approach in dealing with several issues related to women and child, and I'm asked to talk about environmental rights and ethical considerations for tobacco-free generation. Again, this is the last three words. So tobacco. When we talk about tobacco-free generation, it is actually all about the rights of the child. It's about the rights of the child, and it's also human rights in terms of largely for everyone. It's a parent's right, or as kid, as mother and father and family's rights and everybody's rights to be away from tobacco use, because it's addictive. It's more addictive than any other substance available in the market on the counter or normally legally sold. So it's the most addictive stuff, and very easily available, affordable, and the minors are the key targets of the industry that sells this addiction. So and I think and it's very glad to talk about this by this seminar organized by GSA, because GSA is already in terms of his working on tobacco-free generation and talking to youth and young people know how to implement this and how to get rid of tobacco as a burden from the society and from our children's lives. So next, please. We are a young country. We are a young country, and we have you can see 253 million adolescents and 231-year youths, and this is really it's a huge population in India, which is just the young people in India, and this is the young population which is actually highly potential in everything, and so the industry also targets this population to make them their permanent customers. Next, please. And we see that as per the Global Youth Tobacco Survey, about 15% of the students used tobacco, and you would see that 21.9, so 22% were actually exposed to secondhand smoke and in their homes, which is really alarming. So which means they are not only in terms of targeted as users, and which 14.6 who are actively using it themselves, risking their lives, and and more of them are exposed to secondhand smoke and other smokeless tobacco use exposure by the family. And it is very easy for them to get these stuff, and while they want to stop use, I'm not sure if those facilities are available for them, and the environment is such that they could approach somebody. Let's say if someone is 15 years old, which means he would be in class 10, a class 10 student going to a cessation center and saying that, no, I got this habit, it's a bad habit and I want to quit. I'm not sure what the health professionals or the health workers' response would be to this person, and how, in terms of, well, they would handle his problem, and how they would get him out of it. Next, please. And we know, and as Astha was talking about, burden of tobacco is actually, basically targeting minors as early as 6 years of age. They are looking, and then most of it in the low and middle income countries. And next, please. And you would see that it is all it's called actually a pediatric disease or pediatric epidemic. So the problem actually of tobacco use starts with minors, or starts with children's. Next, please. And this is well documented. Even the industry documents suggest this, and this is well documented in Surgeon General's reports, and other researchers who have done this know that if you start using tobacco by the age of 18 or before the age of 18, your likelihood of being continuing to use that is 31%. Whereas if you start at after 24 years, the likelihood is only 5% that you will continue to use. So this is the difference at 18 and 14, and you can think about what happens at 15 or below or before 15, and you have considerable number of population which starts before 15 years of age in India. So this is the alarming part, and this is where I think in terms of the violation of people's the kids' rights happen. Next, please. So while I'm talking about this, I think from an environmental rights perspective, the exposure to secondhand, and I've already gave that about 22% kids, children are exposed to secondhand smoke at home. You can see that even at home and overall in India, in terms of adult exposure, 30.2% people are exposed at workplace, 38.7% at home, and 23% at work public places. So public places again are accessed by minors. Home is accessed by minors, and several these workplaces would also have minors, because I'm not sure. You can also say that a restaurant, bar is a workplace. Factory, and even shopping malls is workplace for somebody, but then it's a public place for others. So I think this is really worrisome in terms of exposure to secondhand smoke, and how this affects our human rights. The Supreme Court very clearly says that this is no violation of human rights, and smoking, although it's injurious to health and affect the smokers, but I think the passive smoker are also injuriously affected, and there is no reason to compel non-smokers to be helpless victims of air pollution. So this is in terms of as tobacco being the reason for environmental in terms of pollution and violation of the right to free and healthy environment, which is already identified under Article 21 of the Constitution. Next, please. So Constitution, when I think the previous speakers were talking about the Constitution and several provisions of it, and when we talk about controlling something, people come up and with the argument suggesting that there are fundamental freedoms, and I think this is mistaken, because fundamental freedoms are not absolute, and there could be restrictions. And I think this is the a time when everybody realizes that your freedom to movement and freedom to trade and freedom to speak and freedom, all those kind of freedoms are now have been curbed during COVID-19, and you have seen the severest of restrictions during the lockdown. So I think and that's how you prioritize public health, and in absence of that, you lose those things. And we have seen that currently even the air pollution and the smoking, or in terms of the impact of COVID has been similar in terms of how it is affecting, or it is aggravated by air pollution, or it is aggravated by smoking. So I think those are connections of environmental pollutions by normal vehicular pollution or factories or other emissions, and also from tobacco use or exposure to tobacco smoke. And we know that in terms of human rights, what more number, in terms of convincing number would anyone want, that 8 million people globally and about 1.35 or 13.5 lakh people dying in India alone every year. So these numbers are alarming, and they give you, in terms of very clear indication that this is a human rights issue, a child rights issue, and we should deal with them as such. Next, please. Article 47 very clearly said, and I think when this was being discussed in the Constituent Assembly, one of the members raised this issue that after the word alcohol, you should also add the word tobacco. But at that point of time, I think it is 1947 and 1946. So it was not very after 1947, it was not very in terms of cool to say that to talk about tobacco control, because everybody was tobacco use was more cool maybe, and it was just starting, and it had it's only in the 60s, late 60s when in terms of 60s when clear evidence started coming up, that people started to say that tobacco use is harmful and it is a problem. And you would see that more people die because of tobacco use related diseases and morbidities rather than alcohol, whereas alcohol is mentioned in the Constitution while tobacco doesn't find a place. So I think with the evidence today, we should do this change in the Constitution, and youth are more vulnerable to access tobacco than alcohol, and tobacco that way creates a gateway drug abuse for children. So I think that's another way I am looking at in terms of tobacco-free generation and the rights that people have, and in terms of environment as well. Next, please. Now we have fundamental duties. So this is I'm not sure if I'm making more sense or I'm linking it correctly, but then we have a fundamental duty to protect our environment, forest, lakes, rivers, and wildlife. Whereas tobacco use poses a huge environmental burden. Dr. Asta already spoke about this, and you see that tobacco actually is tobacco use and tobacco related waste products. They are already causing water pollution. They were causing air pollution. Tobacco growing and even tobacco curing and making it a final product needs a lot of woods, and burning and cutting the forest. So lot of deforestation, in terms of results. People say, it is said that about for each 300 cigarettes that are made, one tree is cut. So and you see that there's trillions of cigarettes made every year, and so which means there's billions of trees cut every year because of making cigarettes. So and then what happens as a product? So I think from a crop to a finished product and to getting to end user, it creates a lot of burden on the environment. You see, in terms of again the cigarette butts and bidi butts and the plastic pouches and other things which are left, and they are actually solid non-biodegradable waste which are there. The environmental regulations currently already provide that tobacco products should not be packed in plastic, but you see violations by the companies. And recently the NGT has required or directed the Center Pollution Control Board to frame guidelines for disposal of cigarette and bidi butts, so that they do not get into the water bodies and other spaces where they contaminate the water, and which actually violates a lot of our rights in terms of as an individual, as a citizen, as a general public as well, and obviously violates the right of the kids to clean water, clean air, and clean environment. Next, please. Next, please. So tobacco is a serious public health threat, and considering that it is a public health threat, government came up with the Cigarettes and Other Tobacco Products Act. There's total prohibition on advertisement and sale. So there's which means complete prohibition. As if the law was in force from May 2004, which is more than 16 and a half, like about 16 and a half years, or more than 16 and a half years now, and you still find that your GATS data and suggests that less than young people less than 15 years are able to use tobacco, which is like serious violation from my perspective. Because we have been unable to implement the law. From 2004, the law suggests that no one below the age of 18 years should get access to tobacco, and there should be no advertisement of tobacco products. And you see that still this is violated. I'm really, in terms of pained that this continues to be the scenario, and we need to work a lot to protect our children from this exposure. The High Court of Kerala made this observation about children's, and I find it really in terms of important to mention here. And this is in recent matter in 2012 when it was looking at implementation of CODPA, and it says that we note with distress that the use of tobacco and allied products is spreading like cancer among the children and adolescents below the poverty line, to which the majority of population belong. The smoker dig not only their own grave prematurely, but also pose a serious threat to the life of innocent non-smokers who get themselves exposed to environmental tobacco smoke, thereby violating the right to life. So I think this judgment itself makes it very clear that tobacco use violates the right of the kids. Even the parents who use tobacco, if in terms of when they suffer from any disease, or if they die, the biggest, in terms of the hardest impact, that someone who would have the hardest impact is the children. Next, please. So again, these are the provisions regarding Section 5, and I think these are important, that there should be no advertisement to protect children, and this should be enforced in terms of, I think, zero tolerance for tobacco advertisement, direct or indirect, should be enforced by the law enforcers. Next, please. And again, Section 6 is the next one, which again should be zero tolerance for violation of Section 6 to protect minors' right. Should be followed. Next, please. And I think when we are talking about kids, we should also look at Juvenile Justice Act, which was in terms of amended in 2015, and the new laws and regulations made thereunder. And if you see Section 77, it is a very makes access or exposure to tobacco very serious offense under Juvenile Justice Act. But very in terms of in last 5 years, we have heard in terms of rarest of rare occasions when this provision was invoked against anyone who have sold tobacco to minors. In terms of, forget about people giving tobacco day to day to their children, and in terms of exposing children to tobacco. And when we talk again, there could be no major child abuse or child right violation than doing this. It's a law which says you cannot handle tobacco to a minor, or cannot allow tobacco, a minor to handle tobacco while you see it day in, day out happening around you. So this is a serious child right violation, and a serious failure of the law enforcers to, in terms of in protecting the right of that child to be away from tobacco exposure. Next, please. So, and that is where I think, in that backdrop, I think that the tobacco-free generation would actually bring back that right to the children, and and protect them from this exposure. We should create this, this concept was coined by a mathematics professor in Singapore, and his idea was anyone who was born in year 2000. He would never get access to tobacco, so no one would sell him tobacco in his lifetime in Singapore. This is still being discussed, and because of the tobacco industry, in terms of heavy interferences, and this has been still work in progress everywhere in the world. And I think we need to put this as a target for ourselves, that we will achieve this zero tolerance for exposure of tobacco to minors. And even after they achieve 18 years, I think yes, the new generation should be tobacco free. So no more deaths, no more minors would die in his lifetime because of tobacco use. Should die. No one should die because of tobacco use in his lifetime. At least the kids that we are seeing, at least the children that are coming in our time. Next, please. And the best way of doing this, I think the political commitment is the most important part of giving this right to the children. There are several countries which have already defined what they mean when they say tobacco-free world or tobacco-free country. New Zealand have decided to go tobacco-free by 2025. Ireland have decided, in terms of have set a target of tobacco-free by 2025, which means less than 5% tobacco smokers in that country. Scotland by 2034, so again less than 5% tobacco smokers in that country, and Finland by 2040, less than 2% tobacco users by 2040. So I think this is a time, and I think governments, even the state governments and the central and the national government, they should come forth and set this target to make our next generation tobacco free, and in terms of protect their rights, to live in a healthy environment, to live in a healthy situation, healthy conditions, and not get into this addiction and toxic habit of using tobacco. It takes a huge toll, and especially in kids. As a lawyer, I think we discuss a lot about, let's say, one of the concept would be voluntary non-fit injuria, which means if you are using tobacco by your own volition, and a person can give his consent or voluntary consent only after he achieves 18 years. So which means before 18 years, his consent for anything or his actions are without informed consent, or he is not capable of taking that consent, giving that consent for such use. And in terms of, and that's what the Doli in Capax, in criminal law, we say that anyone who, any person below the age of 7 years commits any crime is Doli in Capax. And then in terms of some kind of mens rea, or in terms of mental capacity, is attributed till the age of 12 years, and in other countries till 14 years. So I think if they do not have that capacity in terms of for other activities, and have no capacity to get into contracts and get into legal binding stuff, so they should not again be charged for using in terms of tobacco. And that's what the companies have been talking and telling everybody, that it's smokers' right, and it's people's right to use tobacco, and they themselves use tobacco, and the outcome is not just because of their use. But the fact is that everybody knows that you have acquired this habit before you were age of 18. So which means it is actually was given to you, you were targeted to, hooked to tobacco use before you achieved 18, and then you continued. So I think in terms of from inception, it is the industry, it is the society, it is the retailer, it is the manufacturer, it is the law enforcers. We are responsible. If anyone, any minor who starts using tobacco, or anyone who says that I started using tobacco before the age of 18 years and today I am addicted. So it's not his fault. It is the society's fault. It is enforcers' fault, and that's what we have in terms of, we need to strengthen ourselves. We need to enforce our laws better so that our children are protected. I think that's all I in terms of I want to say and I think I was requested to talk about, I think, ethical issues. This involves ethical issues, in terms of when we talk about child rights, it's an ethical issue. So how ethical it is when the law says a minor should be protected from exposure to tobacco. It's a very clear law, right? COTPA very clearly says no one should sell tobacco products to a person below the age of 18 years. So how come that person below the 18 years is a smoker? Why? How come that gets data? That gets data which suggests that no more than 15% or 20% people who have started using tobacco before the age of 15 years is I don't know how would you how would you say that that is ethical, for the society, for us to do that? So I think it's very right step taken by GSA and other colleagues in India who are trying to do this tobacco-free generation. And I think political voice should be gathered around it, and it should be the next way forward, to eliminate more miseries and deaths caused by tobacco. Yeah. If there are any questions, I'm happy to take that. Thank you, Asta, for giving this opportunity.
We'll be taking the questions at the end. Thank you, Dr. Amit. You have very well quoted voluntary non-fitted juria maxim, the legal maxim. Now, the next speaker for the day. Next slide, please. Our next speaker for the day is Mr. Manish Pant. He's the communication manager with Vital Strategies. He's a strategic communication professional with over more than 13 years of experience in journalism, corporate communication, and media advocacy. He's working with Vital Strategies India office as a communication manager and is leading the Managing India relation earned in social media for NCDs programs in India with a focus on tobacco control. Manish holds a degree in mass communication from Delhi University. Next slide, please. Now I would request Mr. Manish Pant to begin with his presentation for the day. Your microphone is off. We are not able to hear you.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, you're loud and clear.
All right, thanks. Thank you. Thank you, Asta. Good afternoon to everyone. My name is Manish Pant. Asta has already introduced me, so maybe I shouldn't be, talking more about myself, but rather than focusing on the issue. Basically, speakers before me, Amit and others, and also the session, I think, gave a brief or maybe a detailed introduction about environment, and it's in a way it's heartening to see that tobacco control as an issue is kind of expanding, not only from the from tackling from a tobacco point of view, but also taking into account the various other factors that are responsible and are and basically are the reasons why this menace of tobacco is increasing, and the children, youth, and there are other issues related to environment that we'll talk about. Those are coming up, and those have already been there. I mean, many countries, as Amit noted in his presentation, many countries are already taking steps. So I think it's time now for India to kind of take some concrete steps. Already there are some steps that are taken by the government of India or maybe by responsible organizations, but I think the need is to have a comprehensive kind of tobacco control strategy. And as we say in our advocacy, that it is important that tobacco control is kind of embedded in most of the public health programs and the agenda, and governments and people, civil society organizations, individuals and organizations should kind of look at it from that perspective. So that is very important. Should I operate the slide from my end, or you guys would be doing it, Asta?
We'll be doing it.
All right. So first slide, please. The next one. I'm not able to see this. Just a second. Just a second. I think some issues there. Okay. So basically, I think the audience here, we already did a webinar about the tobacco enforcement and reporting movement, and I think if we have similar audience, I'll excuse me, I'll probably not go that detail into it, but maybe just to give a quick refresher about what actually you're seeing on screen. So this basically came up around early last year in 2019, wherein as an organization, and also along with the the BI partners, Union, WHO, and CTFK, we were thinking to, in a way, kind of involve general public into the discussion and discourse on tobacco control. So since Vital Strategies as an organization takes into account, we handle the communication strategies, and we work very closely with the Ministry of Health, and we focus a lot on social media. So we thought that this is maybe a good kind of platform and initiative wherein what we can do is build an online army of people in India, and from different parts of country, and I mean also from abroad, who tomorrow can become a tobacco control champion. So that was the seed idea. After that, we capitalized on it, and we launched a long-term kind of a campaign. It's a Facebook page. I would request you to please look at it, on your Facebook profile, and like, follow, and share the posts if you would like. So we like to call it a movement on social media, primarily Facebook, wherein general public are, like I said, encouraged to report tobacco control violations that they see around their houses, around where they work, and around different areas, and not only from a legal perspective, but also from the perspective of human rights, but also from the perspective of the different rights and the rights given to us by our constitution, right to life, and basically if we see somebody smoking in front of us in a public place, and maybe in a restaurant where it is not allowed, which is outside the designated smoking areas, they can kind of click a picture of the violation and post it there. How it will help is we're trying to create a repository of all the violations, and then that repository can be kind of shared with relevant stakeholders at the state and at the national level. Next slide, please. Okay, this is a very kind of favorite topic for all of us, especially in tobacco control, talking about industry. And as I think as citizens and as common people, we may or may not understand the extent to which the industry kind of interferes in our thinking. Amit, in his kind of the last part of his presentation, he was mentioning about if a person below the age of 18 years has kind of taken up smoking, or is a long time smoker or a tobacco user, and maybe 10, 15, 20 years down the line, he or she says that I am not able to quit tobacco, or I have this habit. Somewhere we as a society are responsible for it. And in that, I would like to add a bit more. In that industry plays a huge role, wherein we've seen that, in tobacco control, and try and explain how they do it. We'll try and explain, how industry kind of blocks progress at every step, every public health step. So that's so in the form of research. So any policy, any advocacy, any kind of law which is made, a lot of thought goes into it. A lot of thought as far as what are the global examples, how will it suit a particular jurisdiction or a country, and then whether it is needed for a country or not. And then maybe if it is about a product, then a lot of research about the efficacy of the product. Maybe if it's a tobacco product, so how harmful it is. Now, through research, we know that, tobacco products, how harmful they are. I would not like to get into that. But what industry does is they try and block progress at every step, starting from research. And I think even before that, but what we have done is kind of briefly put out these four. So what they'll do is they'll muddle the credible science with maybe science which is less accepted, the common people would not even know. So that's something which, and they'll try and promote it. The other is policy. With respective policy makers and stakeholders, they'll try to create a narrative of, if that policy comes into picture, if that policy is kind of adapted or adopted or implemented, then how detrimental it can be for the economy, how detrimental it can be for the country. And that we have seen in many, many instances in India. They come up with fake narratives, or maybe, like I said, not so credible science, and then they'll try and create a narrative about that. Then about the implementation, again, in the last presentation, for example, if, like Amit gave an example of, if the law clearly says or states that any person below the age of 18 years should not even sell tobacco, or it should not be sold to any person, then why? I mean, we all know that this is being flouted rampantly. So why is that? It is poor implementation. And it's not only poor implementation on the part of enforcement officials, it is also kind of, it also becomes a duty of the seller. If, the person has kind of set up a shop to sell a particular product, he or she should abide by the law. But that is not happening. And therefore, industry also plays a huge part in that. And then proposed policy, like adoption of different policies, if at all they are, adopted, then it goes through a lot of, political process and maybe an administrative and process. So that is also being interfered by the industry. So in a nutshell, tobacco industry, because they make those products and they want people to, kind of get hooked to the products for a long period of time, and also at the same time acquire new users. So therefore, they block progress at every step so that their profits are kind of increasing day by day. Next slide, please. Okay, these are the examples how they kind of promote their product, and I'll quickly go through that and maybe come to the environment one. And that's so these are examples of surrogate advertising, promotions and sponsorships. You all must have seen in your near your area, if at all there's any event which is going on. So you'll see huge, the big companies, especially tobacco companies, they sponsor many festivals or music CDs or music labels, or they come up with surrogate products because they cannot promote tobacco directly. So the big companies come up with these tactics, and these are, in a way, they do give a brand recall of a particular product, of the tobacco product, because the tobacco product and the non-tobacco products are almost similar. If not, then they carry the same logo. The parent company is the same. So therefore, people look and perceive them as the tobacco products, and therefore they do this kind of marketing. Next slide, please. The other strategy is sale of tobacco products on retail websites to target you. This again, of course, is something which requires, I think, immediate attention, especially in the case of e-cigarettes, and especially in the case of other tobacco products. So because they flout the law, it is easily available. There are so many angles to it, and this is again an industry strategy through which they try and buy the product. And this was kind of very rampant during the lockdown phase, wherein tobacco products were not generally available in the market, but through these websites, one could kind of order once the lockdown was relaxed, and that there were limited kind of restrictions. And also they're easily available. And most importantly, they do not carry the specified health warnings, because most of these products are not even manufactured in India. So Indian government says that there's a law to carry 85% pictorial health warnings on tobacco products. So most of the products do not carry, so it defeats that purpose as well. Next slide, please. Then promotional offers and discount. This is to lure the youth and to people to kind of take up tobacco products, or maybe get hooked onto it, or maybe try out new products. Next slide. Then again, this is one area wherein again some work is going on, because a policy development is in process related to this. It's a huge, I mean, we would like to say that it's a huge win as far as tobacco control is concerned, because these are the new areas and new platforms on which audience nowadays is consuming content. So if audience is has moved on to a different platform, which are online streaming platforms, Amazon, Netflix, and others, then the tobacco industry and their marketing strategies have also moved on to these platforms. They try and normalize the use of tobacco in many series. Like recently also, there are so many TV series in India that show rampant kind of depiction of tobacco, alcohol, and other unhealthy products, which is, I mean, if you look at it, you will see that there's no need for that kind of character to consume tobacco or alcohol. But they deliberately put it due to, for maybe mass appeal, and also to kind of promote and normalize smoking. So a policy development related to this is coming up very soon, and I think it's going on. Next slide, please. So to counter tobacco industry interference, as I mentioned at the beginning, the objective of this Facebook page was to counter tobacco industry interference and kind of create a movement and an online army of people to report tobacco violations. And in denormalizing, what we do is we use data to highlight health harms. Those are credible, scientific, and accepted data. Like, we use GATS data, we use figures from the WHO, we use different reports by credible and scientific public health organizations to highlight the health harms of tobacco use, and also related to promotions and, tobacco advertising, promotions, and sponsorship. Then what we also do is we put real stories and faces to the tobacco epidemic. I mean, we have, in the past, made testimonial campaigns of real, victims of tobacco use, and those who have lost their lives as well. So that, in a way, is gives a hard-hitting message of the real harms, because what tobacco industry does and show are aspirational messaging and celebrities taking up tobaccos. What they don't show is what actually happens to a tobacco user in I think more than 50% of the cases. So that is something that that we as an organization, along with our partners, are kind of trying to put that out in the minds of general public, that this is the real face of using tobacco. And then we show evidence of tobacco industry manipulation to general population. Like I just mentioned, the previous few slides were basis that how tobacco industry is kind of manipulating information and manipulating their strategies to get people hooked on to, or maybe get people more acquainted with tobacco use. Next slide, please. Okay, here's a small video on term, how one can report tobacco violations related to anything that you see. I mean, since we're talking about environment, I mean, you see tobacco litter, you see tobacco waste in streets. You can click a picture and report it on the platform. After this small video, if you could just play it, or somebody can just play it.
Is it in the PowerPoint itself? Yeah,
yes.
It's playing.
Next slide, please. So this is a small video that we've made basically on how to report violations on the platform, wherein I mean, this video is available in the presentation, or I can also share it with the team, those of you who are interested in kind of reporting violations. And I would urge you to kind of look at the page, look at the violations that are being reported by general public, and maybe there are a few ideas that people can also themselves generate and kind of post. So and now coming to to the important issue of tobacco and environment. I mean, what we have done is we're just doing one leg of this policy update, and this we are doing in close collaboration with the union, Amit and his team. Basically, I don't know whether this was mentioned before in the session, but I'll just quickly go through it. That National Green Tribunal, they basically directed the Central Pollution Control Board to adopt and kind of draft guidelines for proper disposal of cigarette and BD butts by December. So this is an ongoing, and I think the development is again in maybe in a few days, or maybe today was the day to do that, or maybe it will come very soon. What we did was we basically kind of launched a social media series to number one, create support for the adoption of these guidelines and how important they are, with basically messages such as ban on tobacco waste and ban on tobacco litter, and the posts are highlighting environmental harms of tobacco waste and tobacco litter. Additionally, what we are also doing is global examples of tobacco waste disposal. So what are kind of best practices adopted by different countries as far as disposing of tobacco waste, and how India can also benefit from it. So this in a way is kind of helping to create a narrative of adopting guidelines for proper disposal of tobacco waste, because in India we have seen that there is a national campaign by by PM Modi on Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. So this is detrimental to that. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is tobacco waste on streets and everywhere is basically a deterrent for a clean India movement. So that's something that has a clear policy linkage. Additionally, how bad it is for the environment, and how environmentalists and other people and other stakeholders, apart from maybe Ministry of Health, can kind of take that into account and be cognizant of the fact that this is creating such problem. And I think most importantly is tobacco industry and the people who are producing these products should be made responsible to kind of dispose of this tobacco waste. I mean, either through maybe making them responsible about about this, or maybe putting up a price on that. Whatever the government and the authorities will come up with the guidelines, I'm sure will be taken into, I mean, these factors of course will be taken into account. So that's something that, but as a consumer and like as general public, what one can do is, you and I, what we can do is, whenever we see these kind of things nearby, near our offices, our homes, and near our colleges and schools and everywhere, we can kind of create a movement, and that's the objective of this. We can even, I would urge you to maybe, if you want, in your on your social media, you can also create the series of various tobacco kind of violations, and then maybe put it out there, and maybe call out relevant stakeholders and tell them that these are the violations reported by general public, and maybe in your friend, in your peer groups, you can always do that. And additionally, if you can post it on social media on the tobacco term platform, that will be great. So that's something that we are trying to do. Next slide, please. So these are some of the examples of posts that we are doing. What we are doing is, like I said, we are looking at it. We are kind of simplifying the messaging to suit the maybe the understanding level of general public, and then kind of pushing out the message. So it all, if you'll see closely, all the posts, the relevant authorities are tagged. Organizations who work on this issue are also tagged. And then maybe one can tag more people, maybe state specific or any other environmentalists that you can also tag them. Use the hashtag that we've created so that it helps in kind of putting all the posts under one kind of umbrella, and it helps in reporting and making and maybe taking into account the success of the campaign. So that's something that you can do. You can, so it's very simple. You can follow the page, you'll find these posts every day. You can follow another page which is Tobacco Kills, full stop, quit now India is the name of the page. You can always kind of like, share and comment on that, and also share it in your groups, maybe in your WhatsApp groups, after sharing it on Facebook, so that general public and people, if they're not kind of posting, they can always like, share and comment and put their views out on social media about what they think about this particular issue. Next slide, please. Again, these are, like I said, some of the examples. And till date, we've received good response on this. I think around 132,000, engagement we've got, and this number definitely, will be increased. And many people are kind of getting engaged with the post in the form of like, comments, and shares. And this is a recent series. I think this is a 10-day or 15-day old series, which is not very old. But this has generated good momentum. So that is in a way a testament of of how people are kind of concerned about the environment and how important this issue is for them. So that is something that relevant authorities should look into it and see that it's the demand of the general public that it's high time that this policy should be, or these guidelines should be drafted and adopted. Next slide, please. again, I'll maybe go back to the example. So these are a few examples of reporting that people have done. The previous slide I showed you was example of people spitting and then somebody clicking a picture of spitting in public places. So similarly, I mean, to counter the issue of tobacco and environment, one can do is maybe look at I'll not say look at tobacco litter, but maybe in your areas, in markets where you go, definitely there are these gutka pouches and cigarette and BD butts lying there, and nobody kind of so what happens to those, nobody knows, and these are not very good for the environment. They're terrible for the environment, and it's time that one should, number one, of course, quit tobacco. That's something which is ongoing, and we are pushing for it, and through our social media campaign, we are trying to mobilize people to quit tobacco or use. But at the same time, those who are consuming tobacco, they I think they should be made aware of the harms that the waste that they are kind of creating for the environment. And these days, issues and topics related to environment are actually getting a lot of momentum and a lot of focus. So I think timing that with the with tobacco, environment, and with the air pollution and soil pollution and water pollution and so on and so forth is the need of the hour. These are some of the examples. You can always look at it. So yeah, thank you so much. I think I'll end here. I'll be happy to answer any questions if anyone has.
Thank you, Manish. Thank you for highlighting the issue of tobacco waste, and many congratulations to you and all the team in Vital Strategies for term. In a world where social media users are increasing every minute or maybe every second, this is such a wonderful step for enforcement and reporting tobacco abuses. Now we'll be taking the question. The first question is addressed to all the three of you. The person says, obviously, the first way of reducing tobacco pollution is stopping the tobacco use. But still, if it is a far-off dream, what steps we as individuals or what steps government should take to reduce tobacco pollution? So we'll ask the first speaker of the day, Dr. Astha Chugh, to answer it. Dr. Astha. Requesting second speaker of the day, Dr. Amit Yadav.
Hi, Astha, could you repeat the question?
Yes, the person says that the best way to stop tobacco pollution is stopping the tobacco use. But still, if it is a far-off dream, what steps the government or the individuals should take to reduce tobacco pollution?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think this is for every workshop and everywhere when we start talking about tobacco use and tobacco control, people ask that why not just get rid of the product itself. No, it's good. It's a dream, and that's what we want to achieve, tobacco-free world. But I think until such time, I think strong regulations in terms of uses and in terms of their disposal needs to be made. And I think Central Pollution Control Board has this opportunity. It should seize the opportunity. Tobacco product or its remnant its waste should be banned and should be effectively enforced. People should be made aware that they should tell each other and tell users also that they should not throw their not litter tobacco waste in public spaces and in other spaces as well. And people who are using themselves, let's say people who are smoking at home or using tobacco at home, they should also make sure that whatever tobacco waste they generate is properly disposed and in terms of proper manner, where it does not get into the public in terms of public view or in public water and on public soil, where it contaminates the in terms of environment. So I think that should be there. And when we talk about tobacco control, I think we have been missing this debate of environmental impact of tobacco use and in terms of tobacco product itself, its manufacturing, its use, and its disposal. So tobacco product actually is an environmental burden from start to end. And I think we should talk about this whole chain whenever we are talking about tobacco control, and in our regular enforcement trainings, and when we are talking to law enforcers, when we're talking to health workers, when talking to civil society people, we should include this communication. What Manish presented, so term is an important platform where students and other civil society partners, they should bring out that how this tobacco creates the waste, how tobacco pollutes soil, how tobacco is responsible for deforestation, how tobacco is responsible for water pollution and land pollution and deforestation. So I think that air pollution. So that I think would help till we see the end of or elimination of tobacco from our lives.
Thank you, Dr. Amit, for answering it so comprehensively. I will take the same question to Mr. Manish. What steps do we as individuals, government, or for that matter, NGOs and civil societies take to reduce tobacco pollution?
Sure. Thanks, Astha. I think Amit, has covered it comprehensively. But what one can do as an individual. So government, as an individual, one can, like Amit said, try and reduce the burden of tobacco waste as much as they can. So that's pretty much is something that one can do. And if that individual is encouraged enough to do something about this entire issue, then maybe they should talk to their peers, people who smoke. I mean, if that individual doesn't smoke, but maybe somebody like his or her friend, they smoke. If something like that, they should talk to them about it as an individual. Or maybe if that individual is in a capacity to do something about it, they should encourage or maybe through social media and there are many channels to reach out to government and to relevant stakeholders. They can maybe join or maybe work with different NGOs who are working on this issue to contribute. Also, they can reach out to relevant stakeholders like this Central Pollution Control Board and maybe submit the demand for a strong guideline or maybe a strong policy, if it is a general scenario, a strong policy to, come up with this issue. They can talk to media about this. If media can write something about this. So these are some of the ways. I mean, the strategy is very simple. If an individual is encouraged, they can maybe look at all these platforms and do the advocacy, as we say, in any way possible.
Thank you for answering that. The next question is also for you. It's an anonymous question. It says, is there any way we can put anonymous post on your FB page?
Oh, yes. I mean, one can post anonymous post on our page, but unfortunately, Facebook, to log into your Facebook account, you will need an email ID and password, and that will reveal the name. What we ensure and do is, like, the post that we get, unless and until so we don't show the names, in the posts. Like in post, it is of course on the Facebook page one can see, but when we report it out, then we don't show the names. So that's something that we can do. Otherwise, also what they can do is maybe create another Facebook page by another name. I will not say fake profile, definitely not. But maybe from the organizations, they can. From their organization, if they're allowed to post, they can definitely do that. Like for example, Generation Saviors Association. Can definitely post. So it's an organization. So that is something that can be done.
Thank you for answering that. The next question is for Dr. Amit. The person says cigarette butt waste is one of the single largest pollutant causing factor. Is there any way we can monitor single cigarette sale? Your microphone is off. Yeah.
Thank you for asking that question. And we have been talking about this lately more, and also in last couple of years more. I would suggest that any sale of single cigarettes is violation of Section 7 of CODPA. Section 7 very clearly says that no tobacco product can be sold without the prescribed pictorial health warning. The intent or the very purpose of that particular provision is that whenever you are selling tobacco product to any person, that person who is buying the product should be able to see the pictorial warning when he is using or before he is using that product. Now, if you are selling single cigarettes and single or loose tobaccos, then that the whole idea of having pictorial warning is of no use. The whole purpose is frustrated. The whole law is frustrated. So I think in terms of that mechanism that you are trying to build collapses. So I would suggest that all state governments should enforce Section 7, mandate of Section 7, and in terms of prohibit sale of loose cigarette and single cigarettes by any person. That's I think the only way to resolve sale of single cigarettes in the country.
Thank you for answering.
Section 7. It's violated Section 7. Yeah.
Also, we have a question from Dr. Rakesh Gupta from Rajasthan. Why such legislations do not have specific clause on accountability of enforcers listed? How can it be legally addressed?
It can be legally addressed. But the point is, the lack of accountability and the lack of sense of responsibility is so overwhelming that you cannot be invoking legal penal action against all the law enforcers. It would create a huge chaos. That's my feeling. Otherwise, the IPC very clearly says any public servant who, knowing that if he's taking an action or omitting from doing an action, knows that it is going to cause injury and it is violation or dereliction of duty, he is liable for punishment. It's a criminal offense, right? So legally speaking, it's a criminal offense. If you are not implementing the law that you are supposed to implement. But how practical it is going to, and to tell you the fact, I think, I'm not sure if anybody knows about it. I haven't come across something like that, any government has taken criminal action against dereliction of duty by their officials. So let's say if you talk about COTPA, you have section 4, 5, 6, 7, and there is a list of authorities who are responsible for enforcing the law. Now, if I see someone selling tobacco to a minor, and there is a section 6 list of enforcers who are supposed to enforce, and let's say if it is outside a college and or a college student who is less than 18 and buying tobacco, and then the vice chancellor is the enforcing authority. So if there is a shop within the 100 yards of that educational institution, and it is and comes under a vice chancellor, he is the enforcing authority. So would you call the vice chancellor for dereliction of duty, right? It is, but who is going to do that? The vice chancellor will say it's not under my jurisdiction. There's a police officer or there's a sales tax officer or labor officer who has to take. So the point is, I think every state government, every district authority or the person in charge, let's say district collector, they should ensure that the National Tobacco Control Program functions properly. And one of the mandate under the program is to create a district tobacco control cell, which is an integration of all departments, create a multi-department raiding squad or an enforcement squad, which is empowered to take action for violation of any of these provisions, 4, 5, 6, 7 of COTPA, and make sure that those provisions are complied. At least do a raid every fortnight in your district, in your jurisdiction, and similar thing can happen at the blocks level and at the village level by panchayat, taken by panchayat. So I think, and obviously, your IC material of the government should not only talk about that tobacco use is harmful, but also say that there is section 4, 5, 6, 7 of COTPA that requires you to not smoke and do these things. And also the IC should say that these are the enforcement authorities and it's their responsibility to do that. I think so, which is missing. When we talk about IC, if you talk to anybody, say that aapko awareness campaign karna chahiye. Kiski awareness karni chahiye? Public ki. Eventually everything boils down to making the public aware, but I think make the enforcers also aware that it is your responsibility. Make the public aware that it is somebody's responsibilities to take action at this space. I think that's how we would cultivate a sense of being law-abiding citizens and law enforcing mechanisms, which functions. I think that's my take. It's a long answer, but I think the legal procedure is there, but might not be very fruitful and might not be implemented, I guess, but it is there.
Thank you for that. Any last words for this session, on the International Human Rights Day?
I was looking at another question also in terms of tobacco-free generation in the Northeast, and it was from Sangha Youth Tobacco-Free Education Organization, and I'm interested in Northeast, and I think our political will is also interested in transforming Northeast, and I'll give you and Northeast is a very good example of in terms of successful tobacco control in India. In GATS 2009-10. The prevalence of tobacco use in Mizoram was like exorbitant, colossal. Whereas in next 6 years, by 2016 and 17, Mizoram is not the high, not the top tobacco user in the top tobacco user list, and which is like really phenomenal for a small state, and where tobacco use is like very common. Very acceptable, very culturally ingrained, in terms of it's very part of the culture, but it is now not the top burdened state in the Northeast or in the country. So I think that's a very positive story from the Northeast. And definitely and see what happens is anything to implement in Northeast is much easier in terms of tobacco control, because you don't have tobacco growing there active. You don't have tobacco industry there, except for in Assam, smokeless tobacco industry. So you don't have in the other northeastern states. Plus, it's a low population concentration. Like in terms of very limited number of people and well-educated people. The literacy rate is very high. So it is very. I think that's the space where you can actually transform quickly, and implement tobacco-free generation more actively. And I know people from Northeast, they are very committed. So once they have decided that, yes, we need to achieve this, and this is for our community's benefit, and this is for our benefit, I think you would see, as Mizoram has already proved, you would see, in terms of great transformation there. And it's possible in Manipur as well, and in other northeastern states. Yeah. So that's, I think, my take, and that I would suggest that every state should go for tobacco-free generation at least. I would give tobacco-free generation 2025 and tobacco-free India by 2030. We actually be doing justice to our sustainable development goals for 2030. And we would achieve lots of our NCD targets if we do that.
Yeah, thank you for that. Any last word for the session, Mr. Manish?
Well, I think if you ask me about the last words, I think the theme for this year Human Rights Day is I think recover better, stand up for human rights, if I'm not wrong. That is related to COVID-19 pandemic, and I think it stands true for most of the other things as well, and especially for us in tobacco control, like stand up for human rights. It's important that all of us in every capacity should stand up for our rights, and maybe voice out if at all there is anything wrong we see near us, and I would say try and take action on it. So that's with that in mind, I think tobacco control and other issues also will be make it a political agenda. Why not? Make it an agenda, make environment a political agenda, make tobacco a political agenda. So that's something that I would like to kind of work towards, and also hope that people who are listening to us, and also wherever this recording goes, the ultimate output should be that. So thank you.
Thank you for being us, for speakers, Dr. Amit Yadav and Mr. Manish. Thank you for being us for the webinar. And I wish everybody who's viewing this webinar, I wish you all a world where human rights are protected and promoted. Thank you everybody for joining us.
Thanks, Asta. Thank you, GSA, for organizing this important webinar. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Asta. Thank GSA team.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, GSA team. Thank you.